Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has all elemental affinities harem. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by BackwardsHazard and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Prologue, nice job breaking it hero. A single change in fate can change everything. A 7-year-old Naruto finds himself in this situation right now, for you see, fate, the crazy bitch that she is, headed out for him this night. This is so troublesome, we find our stubby hero, cursing his rotten luck. Only a month before the orphanage that had taken care of him all his life had kicked him out on the street, good riddance I say, Naruto huffed, not like he had many good memories of the place, all the adults there were always so mean to him. Several times he even feared for his life after several severe beatings over very minor things, though his pranks could hardly be called minor, the flooding of the faculty bathroom being one of the more destructive things he's done, but in the end, it never really did any lasting damage, besides the place smelling funny for a few days as it aired out. However, the bastards were a bit more resourceful in finding loopholes in their duty of taking in all the war orphans after the Kyuubi attack. Naruto couldn't and wouldn't get into all the red tape, suffice it to say he was boned royally. With that little loophole they were able to kick him out and there was nothing the third could do for him. So, emotionally hurt and hungry, the yellow-haired prankster had made his home on the streets, dodging the civilians that tried to beat him. Why? He had no fucking clue, but like a certain pineapple-haired Nara often said, it was too troublesome to try and sucker one of the civilians into telling him, even if he did muster up the nerve, he doubted that any of the bastards would have wasted their breath. Oh well. Naruto mused, at least things can't get any worse. There's the little demon brat. Get him. A voice yelled from behind Naruto. He turned to look at a large mob of civilians and sweat dropped. Was that tempting fate? He thought to himself, oh shit. He took off running with the mob right behind him. Naruto was dodging random debris being thrown his way by the angry mob, including but not limited to a beer can grate, a mob of drunks, a bricko haha, a brick joke, a broom thrown like a javelin, what am I, dirt to them. Don't answer that, a kitchen sink, not even gonna ask. The witty thoughts Naruto had in his head with each outlandish thing being tossed his way, while keeping his mind off of fear, took away from his concentration, and that came back to bite him in the ass as he took a wrong turn and ended up in a dead-end alley. Shit. Naruto cursed his luck, turning back to see the crowd had barred the only exit. There was at least 10 of them, too many to fight and too many to fool. He wasn't getting away from this beating, he realized. He backed against the wall as far as he could, fear and anxiety clouding his eyes. He slid down the wall to a sitting position. No please, he whispered. He noticed quite a few of the villagers were armed this time, unlike the times before they had just physically beaten him. Most of these were carrying sharp tools and knives. Are they planning to kill me? The thought caught in his throat, choking him. The mob was only a few yards away from him now. One of the people threw a glass bottle his way, the glass projectile barely missing his head and smashing into the wall beside him. He flinched slightly as a large piece of broken glass cut across his cheek, creating a thin trail of blood. Naruto reached up and touched the burning red trail. They had never left anything more than bruises and welts on him before. This group wasn't out to enjoy a beating, they were out for blood. A shocked expression crossed his face. He looked at the gathering, fear slowly giving way to terror-induced anger as he lashed out at his aggressors verbally. Why? He yelled at them, why are you doing this? Shut up, demon. One of them shouted. Why do you all think I'm a demon? Have I ever hurt any of you? The boy cried. A few of the villagers looked at each other uncertain. His words rang with truth. The boy himself had never personally done anything to them, but the majority of the crowd just yelled back at him. You are a demon, boy, you cannot fool us with your petty trickery. But why? He asked quietly. Only one of the people caught that, an overly drunk, overly fat man who had a large scar across his face, spoke up in a slurred voice. I'll tell you why, you little demon fox. The man hiccupped lightly, drawing away from his angry appearance for a moment before a deep glare filled his face. How old are you, boy? Naruto's face crunched in confusion. I'm 7, why? The man's face grew dark, a menacing grin twitched across his face. Haha, and your birthday? October 10th. He answered slowly, his mind racing about what this could mean. Would he finally learn why he was hated? But the real question was, would he want to know? Well then, the fat man grinned wider. What happened 7 years ago on October 10th? He laughed a dark laugh, his eyes focusing on the boy, causing Naruto to break out in a cold sweat. Naruto thought for a moment, what did happen 7 years ago? The only thing I can think of is no it can't. His face turned from confusion to shock as he stared at the fat man only a dozen feet from him, turning an ivory shade of white as he paled in front of the crowd of angry drunks. No, he finally said at length. Oh, but it can, demon boy, the man spat out, venom and malice in his voice. That night the 4th Hokage killed the 9-tailed demon fox. You were born not moments after. You, boy, are the 9-tailed fox reincarnated. It can't be. Naruto looked horrified. A sudden surge of power rushed through him as a tingling ran through his arms. Those whisker marks and that wound that's healed on your cheek are proof enough of the demon inside of you. The man said with finality. Naruto felt for the wound again and in horror he realized it was gone, healed almost instantly. He knew he had a healing factor and that alone wasn't really normal, but this was just too much for him. Najustwi. His voice squeaked lightly, this time no one heard him as he hung his head in shame, I'm the fox. He thought quietly before he was broken out of his self-pity by a loud roar. He looked up sharply and saw the thugs rushing him. Naruto raised his hands in defense and time seemed to slow down for him. Naruto looked at the men approaching. The tingling he felt moments before turned into a bitter cold with a sharp wind flowing around him. The men charging stopped quickly looking at the boy in front of them. Around Naruto was a raging gale of wind and the moisture in the air had frozen. Ice began forming around him, freezing the blades of the weapons the men carried before they shattered into pieces. Most of the men looked at the boy in shock and fear, but the fat man from before had a look of utter rage on his face. See, he is a demon, the man spat, pulling out a large wooden club. He rushed forward preparing to crush the boy's skull. Naruto raised his hand in defense and the ice around him rose to meet the challenge. Unfortunately the man did not feel the pain, drunk as he was as the ice speared him in the stomach. With a look of shock he brought the club down on Naruto's skull and a splitting pain ran through Naruto's head before everything went dark. Ooh. Naruto sat up and looked around. He was in a sewer with dark corridors leading away from him. In front of him was a large room, the steam and heat from the room causing a sticky feeling to break out on his skin. The only thing that seemed out of place in the dank pipe-filled chamber was a large gate-like thing in front of him. There was a small piece of paper on the gate with the kanji for seal written on it. Naruto felt strangely sick in the place, like an evil presence was watching him. Where am I? He spoke softly, not expecting a reply. You are inside your mind, foolish human. A deep reverberating voice rumbled around him, causing Naruto to jump several inches in the air in shock. Naruto watched as a pair of deep red eyes appeared from behind the cage. Naruto backed up from the cage, hands shaking and face torn with terror. Whoa, are you? He asked quickly, falling back against the pipe-covered wall. Stupid boy, that man earlier told you, didn't he? I am the nine-tailed demon fox Kyuubi. The beast roared the last bit and an evil smile spread in the darkness, the glittering teeth of its mouth shining behind the bars of the gate. The look of hurt crossed Naruto's face. So it's true then. I am a demon. The fox however laughed heartily, the exhaled air shaking the room. You? A demon? Ha, don't make me laugh. The beast chuckled, the only thing demonic about you is me, foolish human. That fleshy sack of meat you killed was as big a fool as you. You are no demon, you're not worthy of that title, human. The fox grinned again. Then what am I? The blonde asked, fearful of what the beast would tell him. Well, seeing as you're asking nicely, the creature mused, and I like that look of fear in your eyes, I'll tell you. 7 years ago, when I attacked this village, your father the fourth Hokage, the fox started, but Naruto interrupted it in shock. The fourth Hokage was my dad. Naruto's breath caught in his throat. Old man third had told him he was an orphan. If that was a lie, why didn't the third tell him? Before he could ask the beast more, he was pulled from his thoughts. Yes, stupid mortal, interrupt me again and I'll rend you soul to pieces. The threat was an idle one, seeing as the seal would keep it from killing the boy, but Naruto didn't know that now, did he? As I was saying, the fourth fought me outside your village and in one of the most insulting things any human has ever done to me, he summoned the Shinigami and sealed my soul and powers into you, boy, his son. The fox's face screwed up in a frown. He then sealed my body and the source of half my might into him, and the Shinigami ate my body and his soul, to forever be trapped in his gullet. The fox growled deeply at the spawn of its most hated enemy. To answer your earlier question, you, boy, are the bearer of a demon. In the words of your weak language, you are known as a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice meant to hold back the powers of a demon, and as much as I loathe the fact, you are also the only thing keeping me alive. This seal here binds us together. If you die, I die. It's as simple as that. Naruto was silent a moment. He finally looked up at the evil presence that now had a shape and name. So what now? What do I do now that I know all this? He was at a loss, even asking the demon itself what he should do. No boy should feel that lost in his existence. The fox however answered predictably. Why not release me, boy? The fox grinned, remove the seal and let me free to kill the villagers that have wronged you for so long. Naruto thought for a moment before shaking his head, but I don't want them to die, and even if I did, I don't want you to attack and kill the people I care about, and since you're a demon, I can't trust your word that you won't kill them. The fox let loose a laugh louder than all the rest. Ha 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 ha, maybe you aren't so foolish after all, puny human. Yes, I admit it all. I would crush the bones of all your loved ones, suck out the marrow and blood from their bodies, and leave you a twisted lump of flesh to grovel at my feet. That and all of the above. The fox licked its lips hungrily before letting that evil smile cross its face again. An angry look crossed Naruto's face, the way he blatantly said he'd destroy everything he held dear was infuriating. You bastard, the villagers were right, you are a demon, I hope you rot in this cell for the rest of my life, you fucking bastard. The fox's face screwed up slightly, going from that deep smile to an odd frown. Stupid boy, do you think this seal will hold me forever? Simply by being here, talking with me already shows the seal is weakening, it is only a matter of time before I feast on your bones. The fox growled at him, but Naruto wasn't fazed as he stared the fox down, and surprisingly the fox frowned and backed down a bit. No matter, I am only telling you this now, because you will find out soon enough anyway, after you killed that villager, the other weaklings are taking advantage and surrounding your unconscious body. Now if it were up to me, I'd have just let them kill you, but seeing as my health is directly connected to you still breathing, I'll give you my aid this once. The red beast grunted once before it forced its crimson chakra through the gaps of the bars, surrounding Naruto in a vile cloak. What are you doing to me? Naruto yelled. Unless you wish to die from those pathetic villagers, you let my power in, even if you don't believe me, I promise not to hurt you this once, I need you alive and blood pumping to eat you, I don't particularly like rotten meat. The fox grunted once again and Naruto felt reality tug him back. With a shock his eyes opened wide to see a dozen or more weapons coming down on him, with a rush of energy a dark red chakra rose up pushing the men away. Naruto stood up as the red chakra formed around him, get back you worthless bastards. He yelled, raising his hands in an attempt to do as he did earlier with the ice powers. He felt the familiar biting wind and cold in his arms before something else filled him, a deep foreboding. Suddenly time seemed to stop. Naruto looked down at his arms, where what looked like green and blue energy were forming around his hands. They mixed with the red fox chakra forming dark violets and dark browns, before the three colors mixed together violently. In shock both Naruto and Kyuubi's voices said at once, Naruto vocally, Kyuubi subconsciously. What? Before all sound disappeared in a flash of white light. Forest of Death, an hour later. Naruto awoke yet again, in a place he didn't recognize. At least it isn't a sewer this time, Naruto thought dryly. He was laying in a meter-deep crater where it appeared as though he had hit rather hard. He looked down at his tattered clothing, held together by the seams. Well, there goes my wardrobe, he chuckled absently, shaking on his feet. Whatever the hell had happened had drained him badly of chakra. Naruto looked around, he appeared to be in a forest of some kind, the trees above him were busted, showing he had crashed through from above, apparently whatever that light had been it had launched him far into the air. Then how am I alive? He wondered for a moment before he palmed his face. Fox chakra, one of the few times from this point on he would admit the fox being sealed inside him was a good thing. Okay, I'm not dead and I'm not hurt, now where the hell am I? Naruto mused, looking around the dense forest again. The meager light coming from the setting sun didn't give him much hope of finding his way, and it would be dark soon, so he'd be even more screwed. His hopes for shelter were put on hold as a voice rang out answering his earlier question. You, my dear Dumbus, are in my home sweet home, the Forest of Death. The voice seemed to be coming from all around him. To his surprise it sounded like a woman. Lovely name, let me guess. It's a forest and it's filled with death. Naruto replied sarcastically. Not missing a beat, the voice replied, how did you know? Maybe you weren't such a dumbus after all. The sarcasm was evident in her voice. Sure enough, a woman appeared in front of him, leaning against a nearby tree. She had light purple hair done up in a fan style, while her pale brown eyes added a nice contrast to the spiky bangs covering her face. Her clothing was some of the sluttiest ninja gear he had ever seen. What was visible beneath the tan trench coat she wore was a skin-tight mesh bodysuit that was cut off on the legs and arms halfway out. On top of that she had a very short dark brown miniskirt that left little to the imagination. There was also a fang necklace on her neck, but other than that was just standard ninja gear on her legs and waist. So Dumbus, what's a brat like you doing out here in my neck of the woods? Where exactly is here? Are we still in Konoha? Yep, Gaki, this is one of our training grounds, number 44 to be exact, the Forest of Death. Her attitude was bubbly to say the least, it definitely fit her wardrobe. So I ask you again. Suddenly Naruto was suspended upside down in the air by his legs. He looked up and saw a large snake coiled around the limbs. What are you doing here? She finished with a glare. The blonde gulped noticeably at the large python constricting his legs. I don't know honestly, first I'm getting chased down by some people, next I'm cornered and attacked, then some weird blue and green chakra surrounds me and some crazy ice forms, then some red chakra mixes with that, and then everything went white, and here I am, Naruto blurted roughly, though his explanation tactfully leaving out his knowledge of the fox. He didn't know the woman, she was clearly a Konohanin judging by her headband, but he still didn't trust anyone, but maybe old man Hokage with the truth of his meeting with the fox. Anko looked at the boy, his appearance showing her more skin than necessary, with all the rips in his clothing and the several burns on the cloth. It was possible that the fox's chakra had taken over the boy and had caused the explosion, but what concerned Anko most was those other two chakra the boy spoke of. Damn, this isn't good. If what he says is true, those people who cornered him are probably dead, not like they deserve any sympathy for attacking a child, but damn, this kid is out of luck if the council gets a hold of him. Better take him to Saratobi, he'll know what to do. Anko walked over to him. We're going to meet the Hokage Gaki, try to cover yourself a bit, wantcha. She gave him a dirty little grin that made Naruto blush a little. Before the both of them disappeared in a shushin. Uo. In the office of Saratobi Hirazanaka, the Sandaime Hokage, the old man was working on a stack of papers, his old age keeping him here late into the night with his duties to the village and its people. It was at this time that a swirl of leaves signaled a shushin into the third's office. He looked up quickly to see Anko. Behind her was Naruto hanging by his legs from one of Anko's snake familiars. He relaxed visibly when he realized who it was and leaned back into his chair. What can I do for you, Anko? And why do you have Naruto tied up like that? Well sir, she glanced meaningfully at Naruto. This has something to do with that explosion earlier, doesn't it? Anko nodded and the third sighed. I'm assuming it was Naruto, right? The third shot Naruto's serious look. Naruto gulped. Yes sir, but I think it had to do with that, sir. Anko explained. The third's face became solemn as he pondered what to do next. What he wasn't prepared for was Naruto somehow slipping out of Anko's grasp and confronting him. Gigi, Naruto sighed as he sat down in the chair opposite of him. Naruto looked up and stared straight into Saratobi's eyes. The dead look in Naruto's sky blue eyes made Saratobi visibly flinch. I know about Kyuubi, old man, I met it tonight and there are some things we need to talk about. Naruto's voice was dead serious. If it wasn't for the way he looked, you'd forget you were talking to a 7-year-old child. At the mention of the fox, a shocked expression crossed the third's face, but he hid it quickly. After a second to recompose himself, he coughed. Naruto, I want you to understand my reasons for hiding these things from you. First, the Yondaime Hokage, Minato, asked me to keep these things hidden from you that you could possibly have a normal life. I have watched over you with my crystal ball for the last 7 years, particularly this last month, and I can see now that that isn't an option, and for that I am sorry. The third looked silently at Naruto. The boy's face was a mixture of anger and hurt. The fact Saratobi would hide something as important as that from him left a bad taste in his mouth. Second, the third spoke up. Minato also asked me to tell you these things when you turned 16 or became a Chunin, so that you'd be able to handle the stress those in your position have to handle daily. This too has become a moot point seeing as you already know. And from that look in your eyes I can also see you are not taking it very well. The third took off his hat and placed it on the table. Did the fox say anything else? I know who Dad is. The third sighed sadly. Then this becomes a bit easier to explain. At the very least I would have told you who he was anyway after I explained things better. The third trailed off for a few moments before he began again. Tell me, Naruto, what would you have done in the Yandaime's position if you were forced to make the choices he made? Naruto looked at him strangely. Let me put that another way. Would you have put the burden that you now carry on the shoulders of someone else? Would you force that fate on someone else's child when you yourself were not willing to make that sacrifice? Naruto's face went pale as he thought about that. Would he have done that, really? Saratobi continued. That, Naruto, is what we Hokage must do. We make the hard choices. We send ninja out every day to their deaths, and when the time comes we ourselves must face down the biggest threats to the village. Even at the cost of our lives, do you understand? Naruto thought for a long time on the third words, letting several minutes pass by. He answered honestly, yeah old man, I understand, and no, I would have taken the fox to my grave if I had to, but I still don't like it. I hate this, what I really am. Then you understand more than I had hoped what my position is on this situation. You don't have to like it, but it's the situation I was forced into to ensure that the village didn't tear itself apart over this. Most civilians don't know the fox was sealed within you, they just assume that since you were the only child born that day along with the whiskers on your face, that you are the fox reincarnated in human form. It didn't help much that you were in my office when the council convened that night after the fox's defeat. The council assumed you were the monster sealed in human form, or at the very least what most of the more intelligent ninja already knew, that you were a Jinchuriki. Many of them called for your immediate death, but I did all I could to halt their intentions. Sadly, the only thing I could do was put you in the orphanage and pass a law that made it illegal to speak of the fox to any of the newer generation, and for 7 years that law has held people's hatred for you down under pain of death. But know this, Naruto, I'm not a god, I can't devote all my time to watching you, and that mistake has led us to this. The third sighed and grabbed a single sheet of paper. Out of the 10 people that confronted you, none of them lived, they were torn apart by whatever it was that you did. I don't hold it against you, in fact there is really nothing that can be done to you, since you acted in self-defense, but know now that your life is going to be much harder, already there are rumors of your involvement, and the council will probably try to do everything in their power to limit, hinder or otherwise try and outright kill you to end the threat they feel you pose. Naruto looked crestfallen, seeing how hard his life had been now, it would only get worse. It couldn't take it anymore, as hot tears fell down his cheeks and soft whimpers echoed around the room. Anko was looking at the boy sadly, feeling a very similar pain that he was feeling. He's in the same boat as me, she thought quietly. Ever since that bastard Orochimaru had abandoned her, she had been ostracized by the village, only keeping her position and pedigree by hard work and menial labor since Orochimaru left the village, and she could only see herself in Naruto. Sir, if I may? She asked at length. Go ahead. He waved for her to speak. Naruto looked up at her, 2 long streams of tears staining his cheeks. If things are going to get harder for Naruto, then he needs someone to take care of him, someone willing and able, sir. Naruto just stared, but the third side is agreement. You are right, Anko, but who here would take care of the boy? The council will ruin the reputation of anyone trying to help the boy, and none of the other ninja besides Kakashi would take the boy in, and I for one don't think Kakashi would be the best choice to take care of a child. The third trailed off, leaving the idea hanging. Anko snorted at that thought. Kakashi was good guy, but the man read so much porn and was tardy for every meeting he was ever called to, he'd be nothing but a bad influence on the boy. Not that her idea was much better, but seeing the same look in the boy's eye that stared back at her every morning in the mirror just hit too close to home for her. What about me, sir? Anko asked timidly. Naruto's head spun around so fast you'd think his neck snapped. He stared at her wide-eyed, breath caught in his throat. You know my situation, Sarutobi, me and him are in more or less the same boat, the council won't touch either of us due to our situation, and it's better to have someone to lean on than stand alone, am I right? Anko smiled sadly. The third sighed. He was getting too old for this shit. I don't know if I can trust you with this one, Anko, this is a very serious. The third was about to continue when Anko cut him off. Trust. Anko shouted in outrage. Trust is something I've had to work tooth and nail to get after that snake bastard left the village. I have sweat, blood and tears to get to where I am. Who else than me to take care of the boy? Someone who has shared his pain and has come out of that darkness at least somewhat sane. She glared daggers at Sarutobi, who sighed again. He was getting too old for this shit. Very well, Anko, I leave him in your capable hands, but I have a few more things to say to Naruto. What is it, old man? Naruto asked, his joy at finally having someone take care of him tempered by the serious way the third addressed him. First of all, eyewitnesses said that they saw several oddities about the chakra explosion that happened earlier. First, that it wasn't just the fox's red chakra, but a green and blue chakra as well. Can you tell me what you felt when these things were going on? Well, all I know is that before the explosion those 2 odd color chakras made some weird kind of ice around me and protected me from the villagers, but other than that I don't know. I see Naruto come here for a moment. The third reached into his drawer and pulled out a stack of paper. He pulled one out and handed it to Naruto. I assume you at least know how to channel chakra, right, Naruto? The orphanage said that you were able to copy the invisibility illusion, and I've seen you use it several times to escape from the villagers. Yes sir. Naruto focused his chakra. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The paper at first did nothing, but then it seemed to split down the middle. Before one of the corners of the paper became wet, Naruto dropped the paper in shock. What happened? It seems you may have tapped into a latent Kekkei Genkai, maybe something on your mother's side. Whatever it is, the third was cut off by a gasp from Anko. Sir. She pointed to the paper on the floor. Sure enough, on the floor the piece of chakra paper had split again, across the original cut, creating 4 equal slices, and oddly enough, each of the slices were doing something different. One was still soaking wet, one was burning to ash, another was crumpled into a little ball, and the last was nothing but a pinch of dust on the floor. Kami Sarutobi was speechless. All elemental affinities. Anko finished for him. What are you guys talking about? Naruto asked, curious about their shocked expressions. Naruto, do you know what this means? Anko asked him. When he shook his head, Sarutobi spoke up. This means something unprecedented, Naruto. Having all elemental affinities is all but impossible. Sure, most people have one major affinity. Most Jonin after years of practice can have 1 or 2 minor affinities as well. But Naruto, not only do you have a major affinity with wind, shown by how the paper split not once but twice, but all 4 other elements as major affinities. And those affinities are extremely powerful. I've never seen chakra paper affected so powerfully by an element. Naruto, the reason this is unprecedented is the fact the last person to have an affinity to all 5 elements was the Rikido Sennin himself. The third let that bit of information hang grimly in the air as the 3 of them stared blankly at what was left of the paper. Chapter 2, perfect for each other, maybe. But how? Naruto asked, shocked by what all this could mean. The third looked pensive a moment, stroking his beard, and thought honestly. I don't know, he said at length. I have a theory as to how that could happen, but it's a bit out there. What do you mean? Anko looked curiously at the third. Well, if my guess is correct, Naruto may have had, or may still have a Kekkei Genkai, one of the lost bloodlines of the Land of Mist, the land near Whirlpool. The home country of the Uzumaki clan, which Naruto is descended from. As you know, wind and water are the affinities of Hymeton, or ice release. What most people don't know is that the tailed beasts all have chakra affinities as well. For instance, Kyuubi's affinity is fire, an extremely strong fire affinity. What I'm guessing here, and this is strictly guessing, is that when you subconsciously used the Hymeton bloodline, it mixed in all the wrong ways with the fire-aligned Fox's chakra, causing a massive feedback into your chakra system. Namely, the mixing of the fire and water affinities caused an imbalance, and the wind chakra tossed fuel onto the flames, so to speak, creating even more havoc in the boy's systems. But what I don't understand is why he now has 5 elemental affinities, but I'm guessing it has something to do with the feedback. The rest of the third's words were cut off as Naruto felt himself being pulled inside himself. It was an odd feeling that left him in that familiar sewer that was apparently his mindscape. Naruto sweat dropped. I seriously need to figure out a way to clear out my head. Honestly, if this is how a normal person's mind looks like, I'd hate to see the inside of a perv's head. That's not how a mindscape works, monkey. The very irritated voice of the fox echoed around him. A mindscape is based on a person's personality and experiences through life. Seeing how bad you've been abused, your life has pretty much been in the shitter. Your mind apparently took that literally. I really didn't want to hear that coming from you. The 2 flaming orbs of the fox stared blankly at him as his eyebrow twitched in irritation. The fox leaned back a little, relaxing as much as it seemed possible in that relatively small cage. Deal with it, human. We have more serious things to discuss. I know you're talking about how you apparently obtained an affinity to all 5 elements, and I personally want to put my 2 cents into this conversation. Sarcasm filled the blonde's voice. And how exactly are you going to do that, fuzzball? If you haven't noticed, you're locked up in here and there's no way in hell I'm releasing the seal. He puffed up in front of the great demon, pointing an accusing finger at the beast. The Kyuubi sweat dropped. Well, as much as I loathe to admit it, you are right for once. However, I have an idea. It's not the preferred one, seeing as I'd rather be released to cause mayhem and torment, as is my namesake, but you continue to be difficult. Well, sorry if I actually care for things other than myself. He glared at the fox, not budging an inch, despite the fact the creature was 100 times his size. I remember now why I don't try to reason and just eat you monkeys. You always give me a migraine. The fox rubbed the bridge of its nose with its claws, which to Naruto looked rather hilarious, and he tried hard not to. Log hand was failing miserably. Shut it, human. I'm willing to help you here to further my goals. Be glad I'm even lending you my aid. If events had been any different, I'd have left you to squirm without knowing anything, but seeing as you now have something this troublesome running through you, you need to be informed in case you accidentally kill yourself and me along with you. The fox grumbled a few times angrily. What do you mean? Naruto stuttered a little, his eyes shifted to concern in anticipation of what the fox would say. You can preform hand signs, correct? Naruto nodded. Good, I'm going to teach you a jutsu known as shadow clones. This is one part of what you need for me to help, and don't worry about the outside world. Time flows differently here, minutes outside can last hours in here, so you should have plenty of time to learn. Naruto nodded again. Looking at the Kyuubi's hands claws and noticed they were in a seal. See this seal here? Naruto nodded again. Now this isn't a very difficult jutsu. The only reason I know this particular jutsu is because it only requires one hand sign, and those bastard leaf shinobi used the thing countless times on me when I was destroying your village. Esha, good times. The fox chuckled darkly, and Naruto turned a beet red at the beast's nonchalant attitude at murdering the people who would one day be his objective. He had a way to get the cage hat. Well boy, start practicing. Contrary to popular belief, I don't have an eternity to wait. The fox broke him out of his thoughts and showed the boy the seal again. Put as much chakra into the jutsu as you can. We're going for replication, not fine-tuning. So anything above 5 clones should be sufficient control for what I'm planning. Once you have that down, I'll show you the next step. Ooh-oh. Naruto blinked once, coming back to reality to find the third still talking. Yo, old man. The third stopped for a moment to look at Naruto curiously. I don't really know how to say this, but Kyuubi wants to talk to you. The third stared blankly at Naruto for a moment before shouting. What? The third's eyes widened considerably, his mouth hanging open a little in disbelief. Me 1 second. The blonde sweat dropped and put his hand into a familiar seal with a slight twist as his hands flipped through 3 more seals after that hidden art. Kyuubi Kage Bunshin no Jutsu with a small flash of red chakra. The room was filled with a puff of smoke. When the smoke cleared, the three looked around the room expectantly. The two adults, in a bit of fear at what the fox might have made Naruto do a slight cough, brought them out of their searching. The three looked down only to sweat drop. A little fox sat on the floor between Naruto's legs with a pissed off expression. And imagine a fennec fox. If you don't know what those are, look them up. They're cute, furry little fuckers. All my haddle of it, the fox twitched in anger. You could at least learn better chakra control. That was pathetic. It was odd looking to say the least, that such a deep voice was coming out of something that small. Naruto, the third and Anko looked at each other for a moment, then immediately fell to the floor laughing. I hate all of you. The third was the first to come out of the laughing fit. Kyuubi, is that really you? You're a bit smaller than I remember. The third eyed the fox, who now had a feral look to its face. I'm not even going to answer that, remarked Monkey. I came here to discuss the circumstances of the container's chakra system. The third immediately sobered up. What do you mean? What has happened that I should be aware of? The third's hands clenched in concern. If the fox was willing to speak to him in person or animal, then something terrible must have happened. As you probably know, the boy now has all the elemental affinities. The third nodded. Well, then this shall be easy. What you don't know is that when my chakra mixed with the boy's Kekkei Genkai, it caused a chain reaction in his chakra network, causing a feedback that all but completely destroyed his chakra network. Every one of his tenketsu were vaporized. At this, all the human mouths in the room dropped. Yes, I see you understand that little bit of information at least. Well, moving on, I worked furiously on the boy, sending around 3 taels worth of chakra through his system all at once to repair what I could. Now this is where it gets strange. You know basic chakra theory, right, mortal? It looked pointedly at the third, who nodded in response. Good, then you know how a being's elemental affinity is decided in the womb, where the parent's DNA is used to determine the affinity. What happened here is extremely rare, but with my tinkering in the boy's chakra systems, I came across the symptoms of elemental convergence. This is unheard of in humans, mainly because humans can rarely survive their chakra system being vaporized. We demons and those of the summon realm can survive to an extent, but this boy surviving is not only statistically impossible, but should be naturally impossible. No natural being should be able to channel all 5 elements effortlessly. The only reason the Rikido Sennin was able to do so was because of the Rinnegan. The eyes themselves were an unnatural occurrence that allowed the man to do so. So what does this mean for Naruto here? The third asked, genuinely curious now. What it means is that when I repaired the boy's chakra network, the other elemental affinities leached into his system. As I said before, a child's elemental affinity is decided in the womb, but unlike other sources of DNA, like the facial features of the parents and body types, the chakra network isn't set in stone. You can naturally change your elements to an extent with training. You can't effectively use all elements, but you could easily learn a few jutsu from affinities that you aren't aligned to. But when you completely destroy a portion of the chakra network and it is repaired, the elemental affinity that is present isn't there anymore. In effect, you have an elemental neutrality. This draws in any elements around it. And unfortunately for the boy, he landed in the forest of death, where the elements have gone haywire for generations. Wait, what do you mean by that? Anko interrupted. I've lived there all my life, nothing really seems out of the ordinary there. The fox sweat dropped. Do you honestly think the flora and fauna there are natural? Everything in that place is either highly toxic or abnormally large. Even in the ninja world, that place isn't normal. Anko made a slight O face. To be precise, it is a chaotic zone. There are several of these places in the world that cause things like that to happen. Sometimes whole nations are subject to a chaotic zone, such as Demon Country, or small pockets like the Forest of Death. The fox took a moment to collect itself. In short, a chaotic zone is where the natural energies of the world are twisted and concentrated. That means all 5 elements highly concentrated in one place. And that's what leads us to the boy here. After I repaired his chakra network, his elementally neutral system drew in everything around it like a magnet. Hell, even I don't know to what extent the boy absorbed. He could have 100 bloodlines for all I know now. With how much chaotic energy is in that forest, I'm surprised he hasn't sprouted any fox features. Since my chakra was laced through his system when the absorption stopped, you might want to keep an eye on that. I'm willing to bet he'll start growing fox attributes soon. There's just no way he wouldn't. I was too close to his chakra system not to. Great, the villagers hate me now without the fox features. How much more will they attack me when I look like you? Naruto said bitterly. Don't blame me, human. I'm not the one who cornered you in that alley. If you want to blame anyone, blame those fools that you turned to dust. As much as I enjoy this conversation, the third started dryly. What does this mean for Naruto in the long run, and how will it affect him? The fox thought for a moment before replying honestly. I have no idea. Like I said before, this is unheard of in humans. The only thing that I can think of that would hamper him is the piss poor control he has so far. I mean, I was supposed to be around the size of a large ninja dog, but no, I'm a chihuahua. The 3 humans in the room chuckled at that. If anything, you should consider this a blessing. This boy has more going for him now than most prodigy of prodigies. All 5 elemental affinities means he has access to all spheres of elemental jutsu. And since 4 of the 5 are fairly equal, with wind being the exception due to the boy's originally high wind affinity, you can probably use many elemental bloodline abilities naturally now on top of the ice bloodline you already had, not to mention abilities you gain from absorbing any energies from me or the plants and animals around you. Hell, for all I know you could have the Sharingan by now, and if not now, maybe develop it further on. You don't realize the scope of what's happened to you yet. If I wasn't so bitter towards your old man, I'd actually compliment you on the improvement. Naruto had something of a bitter smirk on his face when the explanation started. As the conversation went on, it turned into a smile and just grew wider from there. So you're saying I now have a better chance at being Hokage than ever before? BFFT Hokage? The fox chuckled. If you aren't careful, you could be the next Rakuto Sennin for all I know. Naruto's grin took up his whole face. Hell yeah. He hopped out of the chair he was sitting in and did a little happy dance, pumping his fists in the air. Sarutobi took out his pipe and lit it. I find it hard to believe that there are no side effects to this happening to the boy. Are you sure that there isn't any adverse side effects other than the fox parts and possible new bloodlines? Something that might hurt the boy at any point. The fox glared at the old man with an irritated look on its face. Human, I've said this before already, I don't know, this rarely happens even for demons, and it has never happened for humans as far back as I can remember, and I've lived longer than 100 of your lifetimes. Hell, the odds of this happening ever is statistically 0, or at least it should be. I mean, the things that would have to happen to even survive something like this are insane. First, a person would have to have a healing factor. With my chakra that's a given, but most humans in the world don't have that. Second, said human would have to have a bloodline, an elemental bloodline in particular, in this case, the boy's Heimton bloodline. Third, you would need a foreign chakra that is the direct positive and negative reacting element to the 2 elements in the bloodline, in my case fire opposing the water and wind element, and finally, you would need a chaotic zone close by when the feedback happened. All of this together is possible to do, but even then the odds of the person actually surviving the event are again near 0, so you see I have no clue what will happen to the boy. Hell, he could turn into a demon and sprout random animal parts and elements out of his body for all I know. Naruto looked about ready to pass out at this information, but before the sweet embrace of unconsciousness could take him, the fox interrupted his freak out, but in this case I can say that this is unlikely. For the most part, the only time anything of that nature happens is due to the fact that demons and summons are physically, mentally and in some cases spiritually different from humans, and that's only in the worst cases that has happened to someone. In your case, human, your body is much different than a demon or summons. Your body is more rigid in its physical nature, unlike us. On top of that, you have my demonic chakra on damage control. I can, to an extent, control what happens in your body through my chakra, and considering both those things I can safely say you won't turn into a monster or anything of that nature. Naruto sighed in relief at this. So I just wait and see what happens then. Basically yes, other than that maybe try and work on all your elemental affinities and see what you can do with them all now. If you have the capability of multiple elemental bloodlines, then it's possible to unlock a few of these and other more physical bloodlines you may have observed early to help you later in life. The third listened to all of this, quietly weighing his options in the matter. On the one hand, the boy's life was turned on its head. The civilians would soon be out for blood. If he was to have any sense of normality, he needed an out. Anko was a good start. The woman shared the boy's lot in life. Unable to do anything about their situation and ostracized for things outside of their control. But the third knew that wouldn't stop the majority of the civilian council from calling for his blood, and since the boy wasn't a ninja, he couldn't protect the boy from them either. The only thing that could really save the boy is if he could somehow spin this new information about bloodlines to convince the council that the boy was worth the lives lost. Lord knows the civilians are bloodline hungry as it is, but that would just turn the boy into breeding stock. He'd need something more to keep that from happening. But what? The third looked at Naruto, silently watching him talk with Anko. The Kyuubi was sitting in the corner, seemingly ignoring everyone when suddenly an idea came to him. It was a cruel idea, but it could prove to be beneficial to all parties involved. Naruto, Anko. The third spoke up gruffly. The two in question snapped to attention, looking at the third expectantly. I've thought over this matter and I have a few things I need to get out of the way. First off, if you are going to stay with Anko, there needs to be a legitimate reason. The civilian council will jump all over that, and I wouldn't be able to do much about it. The room grew quiet. Naruto sat down, a little somber at the thought of being back on the streets again. Couldn't I just adopt him? Anko asked curiously. He'd be like a little brother. She shot the boy a grin. I have already tried that, Sarutobi replied sadly. I'd have adopted the boy myself if that were the case. Naruto was shocked by the man's words. He never knew that the old man cared that much about him, but those words only cemented his respect for him even more. Also, that's not the only problem related to the civilian council. The third took a long drag on his pipe. I know this might come as a shock, but I don't think that the civilian council will let the deaths of so many civilians just be ignored. They most likely will try to ask for your life. Naruto. The grimness in the third's tone sent chills up the blonde's spine as he turned a pale shade of white. However, he looked up quietly. I have an idea that might help. The third sent a meaningful look at Anko, who liked the blonde next to her paled drastically. Naruto, Anko, the third sighed. My idea is for the two of you to be married. You could hear the pair of jaws hitting the floor at this point while the Kyuubi was laughing its ass off in the corner. What? The blonde and the babe replied together. It's exactly as I said. Now listen to my reasons before you say anything else. The third growled out. The two wisely shut their mouths before nodding. Naruto, the only thing that I can think of to get you out of this situation is to reveal what has happened to you to the council. If I can convince the council that you are much more valuable alive than dead, then it just may be enough to save you. But to do that you'd need to provide something of value to the village, and in your case that is where your bloodline and our bloodlines will come into play. The third turned to the fox in the corner. Kyuubi, what has happened to the boy can be inherited by his children, correct? The fox nodded. Well, that is the basis for my idea. As long as you are alive, your bloodline per second will keep the council off of you. As for you two being wed, there are several reasons for that. First, he held up a finger. It's to keep the council from whoring the boy off to half the women in the village when he comes of age. Having a bride-to-be will keep most of them happy, as long as you are married and have at least one child by the time you are 16. Of course, they may push for you to have multiple wives, according to the Clan Restoration Act. Since you are technically the head of your clan, but that is entirely your decision as long as you have at least one wife and child. The third held up another finger. Second, this will also allow you and Anko to remain close to one another, allowing Anko to take care of you. Naruto. This also means that you will always be under watch by an experienced ninja, which will make your case a lot easier when they demand someone keep an eye on you. Another finger went up. And finally, third, this applies to you, Anko. It is to allow you to redeem yourself in eyes of the council, both ninja and civilian. Being married means that you are tied in a way to this village now, so the odds of you defecting are slightly lower in the eyes of your peers. You would be able to gain a certain amount of respect from both sides of the council, not only for going through with this in the first place, but if everything goes as planned, then possibly redeeming yourself completely by following through with it as well. He let his words sink in for a moment before continuing. This whole idea is underhanded, I know. It's also unfair to both of you in a way, but given what has happened and what will most likely happen, this is the best course of action. Do you both understand? Anko was silent for a while as she mulled over the third's plan. She could definitely benefit from this in a major way. Ever since that snake bastard Orochimaru had abandoned her, she had been the black sheep, a stain on the supposedly proud village of Konoha. Hell, her life sucked, everyone looked down on her, and no one would give her the time of day. Hell, this really was the only option open to her at the moment that at least had some guarantee of redemption, with a minimal amount of effort. And who's to say, they really weren't that far apart age-wise. 9 years isn't that much, and that gap would mean less and less the older they got, so age didn't really bother her. She had also seen the fourth Hokage in his prime. If this boy looked anything like him when he got older, he'd be quite the looker. Personality-wise, she could tell at least mentally the boy was older than he appeared. That came with the whole I have no family and I grew up on my own mentality. But if all else failed, she'd have the rest of his young life to groom the boy in anything he currently lacked. So to cap off her mental checklist, he had the looks, mentality, prestige, most likely ability given this new development in his powers, and with that he'd also have the finances down after he grew up a bit and could take on missions. So really, what problem did she have? Well, she could think of Ani as she stole a glance at the boy's pants. No, bad Anko, she mentally berated herself. Orochimaru is the pedophile, not you. That didn't stop her from glancing at the boy's crotch again. If the gaki was packing heat, when the time came for them to truly tie the knot, she could say with certainty that he'd be one hell of a hubby. Naruto, on the other hand, was completely blank. As soon as the third had finished speaking, the hamster wheel stopped spinning and the gears locked up. I'm going to be married. He thought stupidly, is that what I want? Really? The boy was stumped. He had never thought about the future. The only real goal he had set for himself was getting the hat from the old man. Becoming Hokage really was his only dream, but what about a family? A wife? Those thoughts running through the boy's head were confusing him to no end. Hell, a 7-year-old wasn't meant to think about his future in that way. Give him another 8 to 10 years, and maybe he'd be ready for that responsibility. But no, he had to make the choice now. He knew that the third wouldn't force this on him, it was his choice after all, but given the way things were, it really was the only choice. The third watched the two mentally go through all of what he had said and weigh their options. It was kind of cute how Naruto had such a serious expression on his face. Given his age, he couldn't hold a serious face without looking completely ridiculous and adorable at the same time. But the third knew the boy was genuinely thinking things through just like his father, so considerate of others. It made the old man proud that Naruto had turned out so much like his father though. He did have a bit too much of his mother in him for his own good and the safety and sanity of the village for that matter. He turned to Anko, who had a more interesting expression, somewhere between apprehension and resigned acceptance. Well, at least she's considering it, he thought. After a few moments he noticed both of them were staring right at him with resolve in both of their eyes. "Have you decided?" he asked at length. Naruto was the first to speak. "Yeah, Gramps," he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "I'll go with it, but only if An-chan wants to as well." Anko's eyebrow and mouth twitched at the pet name as she dropped her head. "Yeah," she sighed, "I gotta say that this is one of the better things that's happened to me in my life, if what you say is true, and I can actually get some recognition in my own damn village, then yeah, I'll go along with this." "Good, that makes things infinitely easier," the third sighed. Rummaging through his desk, the third pulled out several papers and placed them on the desk. "These papers here need to be signed to recognize that you both are indeed married. Once signed, you will need a ring made to seal the deal actually." "Hold on a moment." The third dug deeper through his desk and pulled out a small shiny metal band with a little diamond in the center. Anko frowned at the ring. "Why the hell do you have one of those in your desk?" The third sweat dropped. "Well, I'm one of the few people in the village who does marriage services. Aside from the fire monks and a few others in the village, though, people tend to come to me when they need to keep an engagement or marriage secret. Also, the amount of people who elope in this village is just silly. I get a couple in here once every other month or so. So I tend to keep at least a few of these things lying around just in case." The couple to be stared blankly as the old man as he placed the band on the table next to the papers. "Well, Naruto, will you do the honors?" The third nodded towards the ring and gave the boy a pointed look. Naruto nodded dumbly as he grabbed the ring. Gulping hard, the boy climbed up into the chair to be level with Anko. The boy gulped once before kneeling on one knee. Anko raised an eyebrow at this. If it wasn't for the fact that the person kneeling in front of her was a 7-year-old, she'd have been flattered. As it stood though, she was trying hard not to giggle at the ridiculous sight. Naruto gulped hard and tried asking the question. "Anko-chan," the boy stuttered, "will you marry me?" The boy had seen people do this before, but doing it himself was an entirely different story. He felt weird doing it, uncomfortable even, like people were staring, though it was probably just Anko who looked to be on the verge of falling on her ass from laughter. Anko looked at her future husband and chuckled mentally. "The brat's got guts, I'll give him that." She reached out her left hand. "Sure brat, I'll marry you, but when the time comes I hope you can handle me." She winked at him with a devious little smirk. Naruto nodded solemnly. "I will, Anko-chan. I'll take responsibility and take care of you when we get married." The boy didn't realize exactly what he had just said, or maybe he did, and the adults in the room just took it the wrong way. That Anko couldn't take it anymore and fell to the floor laughing. The third had a perverted grin and a small trail of blood coming from his nose. Kyuubi, well, he was asleep, but the wide grin on his face showed he was well aware of what his idiot container had just said. "It wasn't that funny," he huffed. "Yeah, it was gawky." Anko cackled from the floor, still laughing hard. Naruto frowned. He didn't like being laughed at like that'll show her, he thought mischievously. A small devious grin spread across his face as the prankster in him welled up. Walking over to Anko, he slipped a ring on her finger, and in a bold move that shocked even Kyuubi of all things, he leaned down and kissed Anko on the lips. The third choked on his pipe. Kyuubi's ears shot up and his eyes flew open. Anko, well, she was frozen, that cheeky bastard, she thought in shock. But that devious smirk still on his lips, he chuckled. "Thank you, Anko-chan. I'll take good care of you when we're married." Apparently Naruto wasn't as dumb as he looked. Anko and the third both turned bright red at the way the boy said good, and Kyuubi burst out laughing in the corner. "Ha ha ha ha. If it's one thing I like about you, boy, it's that devious nature of yours. Got the blood of the kitsune in you, no doubt about it." Naruto walked smugly back to his chair as he waited for the other humans in the room to compose themselves after that little stunt of his. "Boy, you little brat." The snake mistress fumed as she got up off the floor and approached the boy with a menacing gleam in her eyes, cracking her knuckles loudly. The third turned away from the beating that was about to ensue, and judging from the sounds coming from behind him, he was wise to do so. The third turned back to see Naruto with a large anime-style whelp on his head with a black eye to match. "Ahem, now that you've both kissed and made up," he chuckled when the two yelled at him for that cheeky remark, "it's down to business. Sign the forms here and make this marriage official." The third handed them a pen. Anko signed it first. She gave the pen to Naruto, who looked at the paper warily. "Is there something wrong, Naruto?" the third asked, concerned at what was stopping the boy. Yes. I can't write." The adults and Fox in the room vaulted. The third picked himself up off the floor. "What do you mean you can't write? Didn't the caretakers in the orphanage teach you?" He raised one eyebrow when the boy looked down, ashamed. Nafi didn't, they really didn't teach me anything, I had to teach myself at this. Both eyebrows rose, the boy had taught himself everything he knew, that alone filled the old man with anger. He would have a long talk with the orphanage staff after this was all over and done with, and by talk he meant torture and interrogation. Naruto, just sign with an X and stamp your thumbprint in blood, that will be more than enough written proof. Naruto nodded, used a pen to cross an X next to Anko's name, then used a kunai letter opener to slice his thumb open. He dipped the other thumb in the small pool of blood, just enough to coat, and pushed it onto the paper, leaving a thumbprint slightly smudged but clear enough to show a majority of the boy's fingerprint. The third looked over the paper for a moment before signing it himself as a witness. Well then, by the power vested in me by the Fire Daemon, the head monk of the Fire Temple and the good people of Konoha, I now pronounce you husband and wife, you may kiss the bride. He motioned his hand suggestively with a grin on his face. Anko looked at Naruto, who looked back at her. Well, he's already kissed me once. She rolled her eyes and leaned towards him. Naruto pulled himself together and leaned in as well. For a moment their lips met, surprisingly it was a rather long kiss. Naruto broke the kiss, pulling back. You could see he had a slight blush on his face. Anko was in a similar state. He's actually a good kisser, she giggled to herself, I can't wait to see what he's like when he's older. Well then, the third coughed, a similar blush on his face and a tissue in his nose. I think it's time we break the news to the council. I'll call an emergency meeting now, you two wait here and get to know each other while I take care of things. The third stood up before walking out to his secretary, tonight's going to be a long night. Duo. Chapter 3. Screwing the council. After an hour of waiting in the third's office, the third walked back inside to talk to the newly married couple, only to find them both sound asleep. Anko leaning back in the chair Naruto had been sitting in, with Naruto comfortably curled up like a fox in her lap. Naruto, Anko. The third spoke up, waking the two from their nap. Naruto fell off Anko with a curse, hitting the floor with a thump when she jumped out of her seat. Anko looked around quickly for a moment before she smiled sheepishly when she noticed the third looking at her with an eyebrow raised. Perhaps I don't have to worry too much about them rubbing off on each other. After all, the third chuckled to himself, amused at the pair's almost immediate bonding. If it was one thing that brought people together, it was a shared loneliness that they could relate to. Are you alright, Naruto? The third asked the boy, who was picking up what was left of his dignity after being unceremoniously dumped on the floor. Yeah, Gigi, I'm alright. The boy turned to say something to him when the third gasped. Naruto. What? The boy jumped back, startled by the third's raised voice. Your eyes. The third pointed to a small mirror on the wall. The boy turned and nearly jumped out of his skin. His pupils were thin, his eyes were still sky blue, but his once round pupils were nothing but slits now. I told you you'd most likely start showing fox attributes. I'd keep an eye out for your tail and ears next. Kyuubi spoke up from the corner. I didn't think it would start happening right now, the boy groaned. His transformation was already starting, and it could only cause him more grief once the council saw him. Come on, Naruto, Anko, we can worry about Naruto's fox parts later, the council is waiting for us. The third led the pair to the council room. Once there he opened the door and motioned for the two to enter. It's good to see you all are here, council members, the third greeted them all. To the point, Saratobi, a middle-aged merchant, spoke up. We all know this has to do with a little brat over there, so what is it? Now Kurakara-san, I think there's a lot more to this than that. The voice belonged to an elderly man who ran the local cloth shops around Konoha. He was also one of the more level-headed of the civilian council. Kurakara glared at the old man for a moment before sighing. Go ahead then, Hokage. Very well, the aged Kage nodded. The fact of the matter is that this meeting is, to an extent, about the young Uzumaki over there. He motioned to the boy in the corner of the room. Roughly 3 to 4 hours ago, Naruto here was cornered by a mob of civilian villagers who, by witness accounts, tried to take the boy's life. There were several murmurs among the men and women at the table at this. I am sad to announce that those individuals are no longer among the living. There were cries of outrage at this. Did the boy kill them? A curious voice asked. Everyone turned to the speaker, the pale-eyed head of the Hyuga clan, Hiashi Hyuga. Yes. The third stated quickly, but before the rising voices could get louder. However, he said with a harsh tone, and the council wisely quieted. The boy had reason to defend himself in this case, and while it still stands that he has killed, I believe a far more interesting event has occurred from this incident. Namely, the means by which young Naruto here killed those men. There was whispering through harem before the Hokage continued. Due to the stress the boy was placed under, inadvertently accessed his bloodline. Voices were raised, but again the third quieted them. I am not finished. As I was saying, the boy here unlocked his bloodline, which, if any of you are wondering, is Hymen, ice release, but that isn't all. Again, due to the stress the boy was under, it just so happens that the boy unknowingly tapped a bit of the Kyuubi's chakra. He took a moment to let that sink in. The boy is fully aware of what is inside of him as he tapped into the fox's chakra at the same time as his Heimton bloodline was active, but for reasons currently unknown, the chakra mixed in a negative way, creating a feedback which caused that explosion earlier today. What does this mean, Hokage-sama? A bored voice asked from the back. The voice belonged to the head of the Nara clan, Shikaku Nara. Well, I can't really explain without showing you, Naruto, come here a moment please. He waved the boy forward. As Naruto got closer, he noticed a few looks of shock as they noticed his slitted eyes and all but destroyed clothes, but he ignored the glares they shot him and approached the third. Here, channel chakra like you did before, as he handed Naruto another piece of chakra paper. Naruto held the paper over the council table, and like before the paper split into 4 equal pieces, each being affected by a different element. Immediately shouting rang out. What is the meaning of this? An elderly voice asked, raising his voice to be heard over the others and yet still sounding calm and collected. "Danziver, a pain in my ass," the third thought quietly before raising his voice. "As you can see, gentlemen, the boy not only has an elemental affinity to wind and water, the pair of elements that make up Heimton, but the other 3 elements as well. As for the meaning, well, that is the strange part. Due to the boy's accident, as we'll call it, the clashing chakra in the boy's system rebounded and struck his chakra network, instantly vaporizing a good portion of it in the explosion." "Impossible," Hisashi interrupted. "No human can survive their network being damaged that badly. He should know, the Hyuga were experts on fucking with the chakra network to kill people." "Exactly, Hisashi-sama, no human. This boy, while he is indeed human, has a body that does not follow the same rules in regards to healing. I will admit this now, but both I and Naruto here have had a lengthy discussion with Kyuubi himself on this matter earlier." A small yip from behind the third drew everyone's attention. The third moved out of the way to reveal Kyuubi in all his short fuzzy glory. "Sup-humans." The fox hailed them. Shouts of the demons escaped. "And monster." Among other things rang out in the chamber. "Well, fuck you too." The fox huffed and walked over to Naruto to collapse in a poofy ball at his feet. The third sighed and waved a dismissive hand at the council. "Do not worry, the seal still holds. That form the fox is taking is just a bunchen body that it uses to communicate." The council whispered a moment over the fox until the third coughed to get their attention again. "From what the fox explained to me, what has happened to Naruto here is what's known to demon and summon kind as elemental convergence, strictly speaking the converging of elements on a elementally neutral chakra network. During the time while Kyuubi was healing Naruto here, the boy was able to draw in large amounts of elemental chakra from his surroundings, which just happened to be the forest of death of all places." Many in the room paled at the mention of the forest. Even the experienced jonin in the room were uncomfortable with the place. As you all know, the forest of death is anything but normal, so anything the boy absorbed was most likely amplified by his chaotic surroundings, which leads us to the boy's current condition. As it stands, the Kyuubi has told me that the boy at the very least now has access to every one of the base elements, with the possibility of the boy forming multiple elemental bloodlines likely. So any ideas you may have had of getting rid of the boy now would be nothing short of idiotic. The third glared at a few of the civilian council, who had been giving the boy and by extension the fox at his feet an evil look for a while now. "If that is the case, Iritobi, then why do we not have the boy produce offspring that would take full advantage of his possible bloodlines?" Danzo asked curiously. "That, Danzo, has already been taken care of." The third glared at the man. "How dare he even suggest doing that to a child? It was disgusting." "Anko." Sarutobi motioned for her to approach. "You all know Anko Mitarashi here, correct?" Many at the table nodded, though not many hid their open distaste for the woman. "Anko here is the one who found the boy and brought him to me. After a brief discussion on the matter which I personally brought up, she has offered to take care of the boy." Several voices of dissent were clear. Silence. "I am not finished." He roared. "Anko agreed to take care of the boy, but that alone would not allow her to do so, since he is legally an adult, as many of you on the council are aware." He gave each of them heated looks. He had made Naruto an adult only a week earlier to try and protect him when he had learned the orphanage had kicked the boy out. He couldn't take care of him himself due to the council's meddling, but the third had bought and was sustaining a small apartment for the child, and since he was an adult, he could legally have his name on the deed. Had he known where the boy was, he would have immediately taken him there, but Naruto had a bad habit of hiding from Pia in his life, though that's to be expected. If only he wasn't so damn good at hiding. It had gotten to a point where even his crystal ball could not find him at times. The third sighed. This wasn't going to be taken very well. Since the boy is legally an adult, clan head and last of his clan, he has made it clear to me that he did not want to be subject to the Clan Restoration Act without his say in who he takes as a wife. I discussed his options with him and we came to an agreement. As of this moment, Anko Mitarashi is now Anko Uzumaki, the two of them are husband and wife." To the third surprise, there was complete and utter silence. He looked at the council members in the room. There was shock, horror and rage, to name a few of the emotions on the faces of his council. Before any could speak, the third continued. Both of them agreed to this. I have the documentation showing as such, and if you want a second opinion, I'm more than willing to let Inoichi-san look through my memories to show that both signed the document of their own free will. Also, Naruto has made it clear that since he is now married, he is no longer subject to a council-ordered marriage or conception of a child, so long as he is married and has at least one child by the age of 16. Any other woman he takes as a wife under the CRA is entirely his choice. Do I make myself clear? The third's voice may have been controlled and even, but the threat was as clear as day to everyone in the room. Many of the civilian council who would have pressed for the boy's death, expulsion or forced marriage given his new possible bloodlines, nodded in agreement. After all, what could they do? The boy had clearly acted in self-defense when that mob attacked him, and even if they could press the issue they wouldn't, not with the potential for a whole new string of bloodlines that could come from the boy. To them he was now even more of a necessary evil. Danzo on the other hand was sitting quietly to the side of things. On the outside he was as calm and collected as ever, but on the inside he was seething. Well played, Sarutobi, well played. You knew I would make a pass at the child, as I've pushed to weaponize him on several occasions, but this. I never expected you to convince a child to do something as foolish as this. Foolish, but given the circumstances, genius as well. Danzo sighed before glaring at the third and ever so slightly nodding his agreement, thinking to himself, I know when I've been outplayed, Sarutobi, I'll back off for now. The third noticed Danzo's reaction and let out a mental sigh of relief. Danzo's backing down, good, that means I've won this round. None of the others would dare try anything if Danzo is staying out of it. The third looked at the rest of the council. Sure enough, none of them seemed keen on arguing. If there is anything else any of you would like to add, please do so. The room was silent for almost a minute before the third sighed. Very well, this meeting is adjourned, dismissed. The council rose at the third's words and walked silently out of the room, thinking about what they had just heard. That was fun. The fox yawned. Well, this body is almost out of chakra. Later monkeys. A puff of smoke signified its departure. The third watched the fox go. Naruto, he spoke up, startling the boy from his thoughts. Why yes, Gigi. Naruto fidgeted slightly. His nerves were shot to hell watching the council debate his fate. He couldn't describe the feeling when he realized he wouldn't end up a test subject or a breeding factory. I hope that you are happy with what has happened, he said at length, his voice quivering slightly in sadness. I know I can never apologize enough for not being able to take care of you. Had I the chance I'd have adopted you immediately, but sadly I was never able to convince the council of my intentions. They saw you as a threat. And in my weakness I never confronted that decision, and for that I am deeply sorry. It's okay, old man, I may have been alone, but I never really felt alone when I knew you cared about me. That and the Ichirakus were a big help too. The boy let out an ear-to-ear smile. I bet they were. The third chuckled. Don't worry so much, the boy sighed. I have people who care about me, and that's all I could ever really ask for in life, and besides, I'm technically not alone anymore, am I, An-chan? The boy sent a sly smirk at Enko, who was a few feet away. The girl in question blushed slightly. Ooh, that little bastard, she thought in embarrassment. I'm Suo getting him back for that. Yes, I do believe you're right, Naruto, the third laughed. Though even if you have found someone to stay with, you'll need some decent clothes. After all, we can't have you walking around a beautiful lady in nothing but torn rags. The third nodded to the boy's clothing, which had all but been forgotten. Anko can take you to the Wolf Claw weapon shop tomorrow. An old friend of mine is the owner. I'll have him put it on my tab. Thanks, old man. Naruto hugged him tightly. No problem, Naruto, he chuckled, hugging the boy back. I think it's time for both of you to head home. Anko walked up behind Naruto and placed a hand on his shoulder. Yes sir. Come Gaki. It's nappy time and I need my beauty sleep. Naruto snorted at that before the two of them disappeared in a shunshin. The third sat in the council chambers for several moments, wondering just what the future held for Naruto, before he too disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Ooh-oh. I'll never get used to that, Naruto choked when the two appeared on the edge of a fenced-in forest. You just need to build up your strength. Your body can't handle the changes in speed yet. That comes with growing up and getting stronger. Anko rubbed her hand through his hair, ruffling the blonde mop and making it spikier than ever. Where are we anyway? Naruto looked around at the forest curiously. Anko smirked back at the forest of death. Naruto looked confused. What the hell are we doing here for? Well, considering I live here, she trailed off, a grin plastered on her face. Naruto's eyes went wide. Wait, you live here? Guilty. Raising her hand up in front of her in a joking gesture. Ugh, any other surprises I should know about? He raised his brow questioningly. Well, she trailed off. I have a fetish for blood. My favorite color is purple. My favorite food is dango. You take my dango, you die. And I have a tattoo of a python on my ass. She ticked each thing off on her fingers. Naruto slapped a hand to his face and groaned. I didn't mean that literally. I'm a very blunt person. She smirked. I can see that, Naruto deadpanned. He sighed, fine, let's just get to wherever in this crazy forest we're going. Okie dokie. She picked the boy up and chucked him over her shoulder. With a leap at breakneck speeds, she jumped into the woods with him, screaming bloody murder all the way. An hour later, roughly 10 of that prying Naruto's fingers from her arm, they were standing in front of the tower in the center of the forest. Home sweet home. Anko nodded proudly as a flash of lightning and evil laughter came from nowhere. What the fuck was that? Naruto yelled. Oh, you know, just the natural ambience. She smiled evilly. Wonderful, he sighed, entering the building. As he entered, he noticed that the place on the inside, for the lack of a better term, was fucking huge. Wow, he took off running, passing by at least a dozen doors before he made it to the arena area that was used for the Chunin exams. This place is awesome. He yelled out. And I knew you'd like it, it's pretty big, so you really don't have to worry about anybody invading your privacy here, that is until the Chunin exams, and this place is filled with Chunin wannabes for a few days, but that's why my room is at the top of the tower. No one really bothers with going that far up just to find a room to stay when there are so many on the ground floor. She grabbed his hand and took him on a tour of the place, pointing out the large cafeteria and all the bathrooms in the building. The showering area was large too, looking like a gym shower, but that was to be expected in a place like this. Level by level they went up until they were near the roof of the building. Here's our room. She smirked, pointing to a large wooden door covered in seals. Any reason why that door is booby-trapped to all hell? Naruto asked sarcastically. I like my privacy during the Chunin exams. Was all she said before walking to the door and channeling chakra into the seal in the middle. Instantly a distinct click was heard and the door swung inward. Welcome to the bird's eye view suite. She laughed, waving her arms in an overly dramatic way. It's one of the 2 ways to the roof of the tower, and this one has a personal balcony to look over the forest with. And yes, I booby-trapped the balcony too. Naruto's sweat dropped. Paranoid much? Anko ignored that. Well, since it's already well past the ass crack of midnight, I think it's time to sleep. I'll finally have a use for that other bed. Nosh trailed off for a moment before noticing Naruto's state of clothing. Ah, I forgot about that, strip real quick, I'll get you something to wear. As she walked to her wardrobe, back turned to Naruto, who rather reluctantly stripped down to his underwear in front of his bride. Me, this is awkward, the boy thought to himself. Ah, here we are. She pulled out an old long grey t-shirt and tossed it to the embarrassed boy, who put it on quickly, only to find the thing was many sizes too big for him. Hell, it looked like a full-length dress on him. Well, that's irritating. Don't worry about it. Do you have a kunai, some rope and a needle and thread? Anko nodded and brought him the things he needed. Naruto immediately got to work. Taking the shirt off, he cut the thing out about the midway point. After that, he took the bottom part and cut the lower 2/3 in a V shape. Taking the needle and thread, he began sewing either side of the V. The speed at which he was doing this caused Anko's eyebrow to raise. You're pretty good at sewing, Gaki. Not stopping, Naruto grunted. Well, you tend to learn things that make life easier when no one'll help you. There was clearly pain in his voice. He had only been out on the streets for about a month before all this shit happened, but really the streets were a better place than that orphanage ever was. At least on the streets there are plenty of places to hide from the people after Yawned. Like that helped much, really. Anko frowned. Look, kid, I don't pretend to know what your life was like, I lived it. You don't have to keep up this mask of indifference around me. I won't turn a blind eye to you just because you have some giant furball inside you, and to be honest, you're not the only one having to bear a seal and bad memories. Naruto jerked his head towards her. Anko nodded and pulled her coat off of her neck, revealing a small black tattoo on her shoulder. The curse mark, she said slowly. A seal developed by my previous master Orochimaru. He gave this to me when he defected the village, as a memento of our relationship. It gives him power over me, to cause me pain whenever he wants, and the thing throbs constantly. I'm lucky most of its potency is sealed away by another seal, but that doesn't stop it from hurting me, or from other people thinking I'll turn on them at any moment, controlled by some snake bastard. Naruto's face was blank for a moment as he looked at Anko's face. There was genuine sadness there, and a bitterness he'd only ever seen in himself. Naruto sighed. It was times like these that made him feel older than he was. A 7-year-old acting like someone triple his age. He dropped what he was working on and walked over to Anko. Without saying a word, he pulled her into a hug. Anko's eyes widened a little. After a few moments, a small smile crossed her face as she hugged him back. It's pretty sad when a woman gets comforted by a child, or for that same child, you'll be the one who understands her pain the most. She chuckled bitterly. I know, An-chan, I know how it feels to be alone. But we aren't alone anymore, are we? I guess not. She smirked as she tousled his hair again. They sat there for what seemed like hours together, just holding each other, letting the other's feelings show through, if only a little bit. Finally they separated, knowing that truly they were no longer alone. Naruto turned back to the cloth he was working on, putting the finishing touches to it. When he held them up to Anko, she snorted in amusement. He had turned the cut-off bottom of the shirt into a baggy pair of pants, complete with a rope belt. The top half of the shirt he sewed along the bottom to make a clean edge. All in all, it turned out to be a nice set of clothes for him, at least until he could buy some ninja clothing. Not bad at all. She appraised him. Like I said, knowing how to make things in life easier is a damn good skill. He flashed her a wide smile which she laughed at before they both went to bed for the night, knowing that tomorrow would be a new day for the both of them. Meanwhile, in an undisclosed location. The pissed off Danzo brooded. "You will rue the day you crossed me, Hiruzen." Danzo yelled out to no one in particular. "Rue it?" And back to brooding the Uchiha Wannabe went, the stolen Sharingan eye behind his bandages spinning fiercely. "But first, I must try that new flavor of Pocky I've heard so much about." Again yelling at no one. Maybe calling him Uchiha Wannabe was being a bit modest, thought our lovable author as he contemplated seppuku via ballpoint sharpie. Chapter 4. Shopping with the Snake Mistress. Naruto awoke to a peaceful morning in the Forest of Death. The sounds of birds chirping could be heard all around the tower. Yawning to himself, Naruto dragged his ass out of bed, scratching said ass as he made his way to the bathroom. He opened the door with his foot as he yawned again, not even paying attention to his surroundings as he made his way to the toilet. Once there, he was preparing to take care of business when a cough interrupted him. He turned towards the sound tiredly, not expecting a naked Anko to be standing 5 feet from him with a towel draped over her shoulder. Naruto stared for a moment, too tired to understand the world of shit he was in right now, then slowly his eyes widened as it dawned on him that he was about to take a piss in front of a fully nude Anko, and she was giving him a look that spelled certain death. "I'm sorry," he began. Anko shook her head no. "Yumoe?" She nodded yep, he squeaked as the sound of a fist connecting with an overly hard head echoed through the tower. "What have we learned?" Anko asked, rubbing her hurting fist wet. "The brat had a hard head." Naruto wept in tears as a large whelp rose on his head knock first before entering. Close enough." She shrugged, still not covered in the least, which Naruto noticed. If the purpose of hitting me was to punish me for seeing you naked, why are you still naked?" Anko deadpanned. 3 reasons. 1. I'm not the most modest of people, you only have to look as far as my clothing to see that. 2. We're married, so this really shouldn't surprise you. If it does, use this chance to get used to it. As she opened the shower curtain to the bath, showing a tub large enough for the both of them to bathe together. And 3. I didn't hit you because you caught me naked, I hit you because you just walked in without making sure I wasn't in here, and also because you were staring at my tits the entire time. Naruto blushed, he had been staring a bit south of her face since he walked in. It's not like he could help it though, he was still a guy after all, and not only that, it was the first time he had seen a woman's bare breasts before. "Are you getting in or what?" Anko asked as she leaned back in the tub. Yeah," he turned back to the toilet and finished peeing, trying to ignore Anko staring at him intently. "Big for his age, good," she silently appraised him. Maybe he cold, no bad Anko, no pedo thoughts. She mentally slapped herself as Naruto sunk into the water with her, blushing madly as he sat in front of her. "I'll wash your back for you," she smiled, lathering up a bar of soap and scrubbing the boy down. His skin was smooth to the touch, not a mark or blemish on him, but that probably had more to do with the fox than anything the boy did. As she was beginning to lather up some shampoo, she noticed a pair of odd pointy things sticking out of the boy's head. Reaching out, she grabbed a hold of them, and immediately Naruto melted in her grasp. She blinked a couple of times, then looked over Naruto's shoulder at his face and noticed his face was bright red, flushed, and was really relaxed. She looked at the points on Naruto's head for a few seconds, then started massaging the tufts of hair, lightly making the boy shiver in her grasp. A wide grin escaped her as she continued her massage. "So cute." She giggled, "The furball was right, you already have fox ears coming in, I'd say a few more days, and you'll have a full-grown set to charm the ladies with." "Oh joy," he said sarcastically, shivering some more as she hadn't stopped stroking his ears. "Kami, were they sensitive?" "Oh, don't be like that, if you're so worried about someone seeing them, I'll teach you the henge jutsu to hide what you look like until we can get you a hat to cover them, and if your tail ever comes in we can figure something out as well." She poked the back of his head hard for a few seconds to get her point across. Naruto sighed alright as they both enjoyed the bath. In the Hokage's office. We find Sarutobi passed out in a pool of his own blood, the red fluid pouring heavily from his nose. Note to self, do not check on Naruto with the crystal ball in the morning, not good for my health, the third thought before darkness took him. Ooh. Back with our odd couple, we find them walking down the main streets of Konoha, with the aroma of the market district filling the air. Anko was dressed in her usual while Naruto beside her was in his makeshift clothing with a loose grey hat on that he had thrown together from a belt and some old cloth. Honestly, it looked like a cross between a chef's hat and a beret to him, but Anko thought it looked stylish with the rest of the clothes, so he begrudgingly wore the thing, rather than try and fool a village full of ninja with a half-assed henge. Anko looked down at her young husband and noticed his rigid posture. "Don't be so tense, kid, as long as you keep that hat on and don't look anyone in the eyes they won't know the difference, and if someone starts shit I'm here with you." "Some comfort at least," the boy retorted. Anko sighed, the kid was being difficult again. It wasn't that he didn't understand that they could count on each other now, it was the fact that the constant glares the villagers were throwing him were breaking the boy's resolve. Every other villager they passed gave the boy at the very least a look of disgust or anger. Hell, she never had it this bad, no wonder the kid was so depressed. "At least I can discourage a few of the glares now," she sighed again, tossing out a small bit of killing intent at a few civilians that were giving him dirty looks. More than a few paled and turned away, which for some odd reason gave her a sick sense of satisfaction. "Is it because I'm protecting Naruto?" she wondered. It's keeping M off the boy as she noticed his more relaxed posture. "You don't have to do that, An-chan," the boy said quietly. "Kid, these people aren't worth your time of day." She frowned. "The old man told me that your dream is to be recognized as a great ninja and become Hokage. I can tell you now, just being Hokage won't get you recognition from everyone. There will still be people like this that will glare at you because they are fools and don't know any better. Also, the Hokage is a military leader. That means he is appointed by his military, his ninja. Not the civilians. If you really want to get some recognition, show the ninjas who you are first and the civilians will follow." The boy froze at what Anko had said. Really? He thought to himself. He turned to Anko with a small smile on his face. "Thank you, An-chan. Anytime, Gaki." The walk to the wolf claw weapon shop from there was in a deep but comfortable silence. "Welcome." A cheerful voice greeted them as they entered the shop. "Can I help you with anything?" the man behind the counter asked. He looked to be a middle-aged man with graying hair and a cheerful face. If anything, he reminded Naruto of old man Ichiraku. "Hey Dustin," Anko greeted. "We're here for some threads for the Gaki here." Same as always, Anko." He scratched his beard and thought. "Yeah, I heard from Sarutobi you were coming by, said you needed some supplies and a new wardrobe for the runt here, though I gotta say when he said your clothes were a mess I imagined them to be more well in pieces. What you have on now doesn't look half bad." The kid here made M from some cloth, an old t-shirt, a belt and some rope. "The little guy is pretty damn good." She ruffled said kid's hair playfully. "I'll say, that's pretty professional work right there. It almost looks store-bought, except for the few seams that are visible. I wouldn't mind having him around the shop fixing a few of the special orders I get. I'll keep that in mind if he ever needs a job." Yeah, Dustin chuckled, but on to business. "What's on the kid's to-do list?" "I'll help you find anything you want." Sarutobi said to put it on his tab so you can get just about anything you want. "Well, we need some scrolls on elemental manipulation, one for each element." "Ah, I see the rumors are true after all," Dustin interrupted her. "Word is the kid's got all the elements under his belt, am I right?" The Inko whispered, "But keep that under your hat. I'd like for those rumors to stay rumors for as long as possible. No need to make things harder on him." "You don't even need to ask. I'm a good friend of Sarutobi's. I wouldn't be unless he and I shared views on things, and Naruto is one of the things we see eye to eye on. You're straight with me, as long as you don't stiff the bill." Anko chuckled. "As pragmatic as ever, I guess. Well, as I was saying, we need scrolls on elemental manipulation, just the basics for now, since I've really only ever covered earth manipulation." Dustin nodded. "He'll also need some kunai and shuriken, preferably the practice kind if you have M. I don't need him cutting anything off before I can get to it." She raised an eyebrow in his general direction, and Naruto could only chuckle nervously. "I see the other rumor is true too," Dustin remarked dryly. "Under the hat, old man, or it won't be the boy that loses something to a kunai." She growled. "Easy, easy." He held his hands in front of him defensively. "I have a few sets of practice shuriken and kunai in stock. Anything else?" "Yeah," she punted Naruto in the rear towards the clothing section. "Go fetch Gaki." "I'm not a dog." Naruto grumbled. "No, you're a little fox. Now get, before I do that thing I did to you this morning again." She flashed him a hungry little grin. Naruto paled visibly and took off into the rows of clothing. Dustin turned to Anko. "Do I even want to know?" He deadpanned. "Nope." A few minutes passed before Naruto came back. The two adults in the room turned and their eyebrows rose. Naruto apparently had good taste in clothing. He had somehow found a mesh armor undershirt his size along with a black t-shirt on top, with the mesh coming out a few inches under the arms. His shorts were black as well and had orange strips running down the seams on the side. A pair of fingerless black gloves were on each hand and a pair of black ninja sandals on his feet. The gray hat still sat loosely on his head, though since there was nothing really loose to cover his ears, he just had to settle for grabbing a roll of black cloth and another belt to make a black one later. For accessories he had a kunai holster strapped to his leg, a ninja pouch on his waist, and on his back was a small tanto, which looked more like a full-length blade on the small boy. "Wow," they both said at the same time. "Not bad, Gaki. That's a nice look, but what's with the sword?" The snake mistress pointed to the blade curiously. I didn't really know, I just liked it, I never really had any weapons to practice with, and this is something my size. Dustin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Makes sense, if the kid is going to get used to a sword or blade it's good to start small and work your way up. Alright I guess, but you can only practice with it while I'm around. I don't want you cutting yourself with it. Naruto nodded. Dustin marked a few things down on a piece of paper. Okay, you have the scrolls, the training tools and some new clothing and weapons, anything else? Naruto thought for a moment before something caught his interest. Hey old man, could we talk over there for a second alone? He looked out of the corner of his eye at a frowning Anko. Yeah, sure kid. The two walked to the back of the store for a few minutes, Anko watching the discussion silently. The boy was whispering in the man's ear, so she really couldn't make out what he was saying, but by the way Dustin pulled back surprised and looked in her direction, it couldn't be anything good. The two of them walked back to the counter. Yeah kid, I'll get what you wanted, but are you sure? That's a bit advanced for you right now. Yeah, I'm sure. He nodded. Okay, one moment. He walked to the back and opened his storeroom door. After a few minutes of rustling papers and clanging of metal, the man returned with a scroll in his hand. Everything is in this storage scroll, just send chakra into it and the materials will pop out. To store stuff just do the same. As he handed the scroll to the boy. Thanks old man. For a friend of Saratobi it's the least I could do. Dustin grinned at the boy. It's all on his tab, so don't worry, I'll send him the bill. Haha, thanks, he smiled back as the pair walked out of the store. Dustin's smile slowly turned somber as he watched the two walk away though the window. A small yawn from behind him turned the man around. Looking around he noticed his daughter standing in the stairway to the living area. Who was that daddy? The girl asked, the buns in her hair bouncing as she yawned again. Just a friend, Tenten, the son of a good friend, a man who I respected greatly. His voice was quiet as Tenten nodded sleepily and walked into the kitchen. Minato, he whispered, your son is going to make one hell of a ninja, I just know it. Ooh. Mind telling me what's in the scroll? Anko asked sweetly, a little too sweetly. Naruto looked warily at her. No. He held the scroll behind him. An eyebrow rose. Why? It's a surprise. The boy stuck his tongue out at her. And we're husband and wife now, tell me what's in the scroll. She whispered angrily. No, he growled at her and turned away. Baki, just, hey. Get your ass back here. She yelled at him when she noticed he had started running away from her towards a nearby playground. Boy you brat, get back here. She chased after him. The chase lasted a good 10 minutes as they ran through the busy market district, and Anko had to admit, the kid was fast for his age. Hell, he was almost as fast as a high-ranked genin, and the way he weaved in and out of crowds of people baffled her. Catch me if you can. Naruto whispered to himself as he made his way to the playground. He took to jumping from stall to stall as his destination came into view. Almost there, he laughed. As he made a final leap to one of the slides, unfortunately for him he overshot it a bit and lost his footing. Shit, he cursed as he lost his balance and fell over the edge. Yep. A voice from below cried as a loud thump sounded. Ouch, Naruto rubbed his head as he leaned up on one arm. Where? He froze when he noticed a small girl in a similar situation next to him. He rubbed the back of his head nervously, feeling that his hat had fallen off in the fall. Hello. The girl stuttered. Hello as well, the name's Naruto, and sorry for falling on ya, I'm kin to being chased by my Aunt-chan. Hinata, she poked her fingers together nervously, and W, who is ANC-chan. Baki, get your ass out here now, a voice screamed in the distance. Naruto sweat dropped. That would be Hiri, don't want you to get in trouble too, so I'll sneak away, just keep quiet please. He turned away from her looking around nervous. No, Naruto-san. Yeah? He turned to her curiously. Is this your H-hat? She held up the thing in question. Ye thinks. He flashed her a smile that made the girl feel all fuzzy on the inside as he put the hat on his head. Thanks for the help, I kinda needed it. You know you're a nice person. He flashed another smile that made her melt. Thank you. Hinata blushed. No problem, see ya. He jumped over the fence that separated the playground from the road and ran off. There you are, you brat, come back here. A voice yelled in the distance. Then Naruto-san, Naruto-kun, the girl thought to herself. His niece, not like father, and those ears on his head. The girl blushed again. She had peeked at the boy's head when he was looking around, and said appendages had grown enough to be noticeable above his hair. So cute. Ooh. Naruto shivered slightly. I suddenly feel threatened. He shivered again with Anko not far behind him. Several hours later, top of the Hokage monument, sunset. Amagaki, Anko choked out, huffing in exhaustion. I told you already it was a secret. The boy stuck his tongue out at her with his back to the edge. Apparently the chase had made its way through most of the village and ended on top of the Hokage monument, coincidentally on the head of the yondaime. Alright already, Anko gasped. It's a secret, now get your happy ass over here away from the edge. Naruto looked at her for a moment defensively, relaxing slightly when Anko backed off. Would you promise not to take the scroll? Yeah, I promise, now hurry up. Naruto slowly made his way towards her, keeping the scroll tight in his fist. Hurry up, damn it. She growled. Naruto approached her warily, keeping an eye on her hands. When she flashed behind him, his eyes flew wide as a fist connected with the back of his head. 2 minutes later. Okay, I deserved that one, Naruto thought, weeping anime tears. What have we learned? Again. Don't piss you off. He rubbed the large knot on his head comically. Close enough. She picked him up by the back of his shirt and brought him to eye level. Scare me like that again, and I'll have my snakes tie you up for the day, and you won't do jack shit, understand? Yes, Anko-san, he nodded quickly. Good, I'll respect your privacy for that damn scroll, but let's get some dango, Chazing, you made me hungry. Wait, An-chan. The boy grabbed her coat. What is it, Gaki? She turned around and crouched low, hearing the pleading in the boy's voice. I'm sorry about scaring you, I didn't just run away to get away from you, I kinda wanted to show you my special place. His voice trailed off as he nervously looked away. Anko turned beet red for a moment, thinking he meant well, something dirty, but the boy turned away from her and pointed towards the western wall of the village. Anko looked and her voice caught in her throat. In front of her was a view she had never seen before. The entire village was bathed in a crimson sunset. It was too beautiful to even say anything. She only knelt close to Naruto and enveloped him in a hug from behind. Neither one said anything. They just sat there and watched the sunset, turning the world from red to orange, orange to purple, and finally ending in a deep ocean blue that gave way to the first stars of the night. Anko was silent for a long time after that, still holding on to the boy for dear life. Finally her voice, nothing but a whisper, broke the silence. And Naruto. Yeah? He whispered back. Thank you. She squeezed him tighter. A few minutes passed before Naruto spoke. Anko? Yeah? I can't breathe. Ah, she replied blankly, releasing the boy, who was turning an unhealthy shade of blue. Sorry. Naruto gasped as she let him go. Don't worry about it. Alright, Gaki, let's get going. I worked up an appetite chasing your ass around. After we get some food we're going home. Okay, An-chan. He grabbed a hold of the woman's arm and the two of them walked to the nearest dango ship, suggested by Ankovia. Sharp, pointy, hurty things. Chapter 5, Impractical Training and School Days. Outside Training Ground 44's tower, 2 weeks later. It's been 2 weeks since the accident. With the help of a gag order from Sarutobi, most of what happened to Naruto was reduced to a rumor. The Uchiha massacre that happened only a few days after that drew even more attention away from him. With the entire village focused on the tragedy, it kept Naruto out of the public eye long enough for most people to forget about the incident. In that time Naruto's fox ears grew out to full size. His tail was the next thing to come in. The fluffy appendage was currently sticking out the back of a pair of casual clothes he had stitched together from another large shirt Anko had given him. The bagginess of the pants was more comfortable on his rear, since the tail was still a little tender. He still shuddered when he thought back on Anko's reaction to Ichuu, the pain, too squishy. He shivered unconsciously. Sadly, our young hero suffered firsthand from the combined effects of marshmallow hell and an overly zealous glomping. Kami help him if any other women got a hold of him. Hell, he was still massaging the kinks out of his tail, though it was weird having a tail to begin with. His sense of balance was thrown off, but at the same time felt more balanced overall. He also felt stronger, and his senses were increasing as well. If things kept going the way they were going, he might even consider this a blessing rather than a curse. Boy, Gaki? Anko called from the entrance to the tower, breaking the boy from his musing. He turned to her curiously. Yeah, An-chan. I think it's time I start training you. You've had a week to get used to your new animal parts, and I think it's time we bust ass and start your ninja training. His face lit up. Yeah, it's getting boring just sitting around doing nothing. I'm ready for anything you can throw at me. Hopping around a couple times and doing a few punches and kicks to prove his point. Actually, first I want to know something. The blonde stopped and looked at her. What? You know that jutsu you used when we talked to Kyuubi? He thought a moment. Oh, you mean the Kyuubi shadow clone jutsu? Yeah, that one. Do you know the parent jutsu? The shadow clone jutsu? He nodded. Yeah, that was the first thing Kyuubi taught me so I could use the Kyuubi clone. Why? Well, now things get a lot easier. Do you know the special ability of shadow clones, Gaki? No, why? He scratched his head in thought. Try and make as many as you can and I'll show you. Okay, he shrugged, gathering a large amount of chakra. Shadow clone jutsu. A giant puff of smoke filled the clearing. When the smoke cleared there was easily more than 200 clones around Anko. Anko's eyes widened as she noticed all the clones. The fuck? She yelled, literally falling on her ass in surprise. Naruto looked around confused. What? Did I not make enough? Not enough, are you insane? Anko's thoughts were whirling. How the hell can he make so many shadow clones? For fuck's sake, I've never seen anyone make this manhood. If he can make this manami god third was right, the brat could be a prodigy in the making. Screw the bloodlines and the elements, just being able to do this is a gift itself. Human-chan, are you alright? His voice was filled with concern. Why yeah, just fine. The shock was finally beginning to wear off, just the thought of what he could do with this many clones made her adrenaline rise. All the possibilities no bad anko. No gangbang jutsus. She slapped herself and stood up quickly. Naruto, don't worry, if anything this should be impossible to do, just the fact you are doing it is amazing. He tilted his head. So what now? Now I show you a neat trick that shadow clones can do, shadow clone jutsu. She yelled out, a single clone forming beside her. Have one of your clones follow me, Gaki. As the clone walked off into the woods. You heard her. One of the clones broke off from the rest and followed Anko's clone deep into the woods. After a few minutes of walking, Naruto's clone turned to Anko's clone, now WH. The clone started to ask, but before the clone could even react, Anko's clone had stabbed it with a kunai, dispelling it. A second later, Anko's clone dispelled as well. Back with the original. Boy. Would you kill my clone? Naruto growled. She grinned. But how did you know I killed it? What do you mean you just? The boy frowned in confusion before a small smirk slowly crossed his face. Anything a clone experiences gets sent back to the original when it's dispelled, doesn't it? Got it in one, Gaki. She laughed. From now until you join the academy next year, you are going to be training with shadow clones. By the time you make Genin, I'll have your ass at Chunin level. She flashed him an evil grin which sent a chill up his spine. This wasn't going to be pleasant, he just knew. Alright, first off, we aren't going to be learning any new jutsu, I'm telling you that now. What we're going to cover till you start the academy is chakra control and nature transformation. She walked over to a nearby tree and yanked a leaf off one of its limbs. First, is chakra control exercises, as she placed the leaf on her forehead and channeled chakra into it to float it lazily above her head, much to Naruto's amazement. The objective of this first exercise is basic control, keep the leaf floating over your head with chakra for as long as you can. It's not power you're after, it's control. Since there's around 200 clones here, we'll have 100 working on chakra control and 20 each working on a separate element. She grabbed the 5 elemental scrolls from her pouch and tossed them to one of the clones. Get to work, she then pointed to the original, you're coming with me. She was about to walk away when something stopped her. She yelled at the massive clones, hey, if you need to dispel, don't do it all at once or you'll give the original a bitch of a headache. She turned away from the massive clones. Come on, let's go. The two of them walked to another clearing on the other side of the tower. So what are we doing over here? He asked curiously. Simple, since shadow clones can only send back mental information, physical abilities need to be worked on by the original. Sure, you can work on your reflexes and instinct, but things like muscle memory and increasing your body's strength, speed, stamina and flexibility is all down to you. He raised an eyebrow. So we're exercising? She smirked something like that. An evil chuckle escaped her lips as she explained her training. All the while Naruto turned paler and paler. Are you fucking insane? Finally finding the words to express himself. Maybe, she laughed. But that doesn't change the fact that you're going to do it. Naruto sighed. The sooner he got this over with, the sooner he could rest. Kami, it was going to be a long day. 200 push-ups, sit-ups, kicks, punches and squats all before lunch, and then I have to spar with her. Ugh, this is going to hurt. But the clones. Okay, let's see here. Nature transformation, the basics. The clone scanned each of the scrolls intently. Channel chakra into the object and imagine that element's properties in that object. For fire, superheat your chakra and imagine burning the object. For wind, split your chakra in half and grind it to a fine edge to cut the object. For lightning, aggravate your chakra in the object to create a static charge. For earth, harden your chakra around the object and grind against it. For water, use your chakra to gather the moisture in the air and soak the object. Seems pretty straightforward. The clone grabbed a leaf and held it up high. Alright Mies, it's time to get to work. The clone pumped its fist before it dispelled itself and sent the info through the ranks. Hokage's office. So it begins, eh? An image of Naruto flashed through the crystal ball head. Just seeing that many clones makes me feel old, Sarutobi chuckled to himself. I see great things in your future, Naruto. Your father passed his will on to you while your mother passed on her love. Remember both their sacrifices, Naruto. Grow stronger from them and show the world you aren't some demon. Show them the real you, the you your parents would be proud of. He sat there for a long moment, taking a drag off his pipe, the quiet of the room ringing in his ears. The third sighed as he exhaled the smoke from his lungs. Good luck, Naruto. Knowing your father's luck, you'll need it. A dry laugh filled the air as the third again sat in silence. Although knowing your mother's luck. A few hours later, back with the original Naruto. Kami, kill me now. The boy mentally yelled. His arms were already like jelly, But Anko insisted he learn the basic katas to her taijutsu style so they could spar. He had learned the first and second katas though the use of shadow clones, but the woman wasn't letting up, she kept pressing him to learn the moves, and any time his stance was off she'd correct him with sharp pointy things. Okay Gaki, you got the first 3 kata down for this style, those are the basics, and they're enough to get you through a light spar, so come on, get off your ass, and let's do this. She stood a few meters away from him in what she called the python stance, a stance based on defense and single heavy strikes, perfect to spar against without killing the kid. Can't we at least take a 5-minute break? I can't even feel my arms right now. Quit the bitching, can't feel your arms, can't feel the pain now, attack me, or do I have to come to you? She rose an eyebrow at this, almost daring him to let her attack first. The hell, I'd give you a reason to kick my ass. He charged forward in the standard Viper stance, the most basic of the stances built on speed and quick successive strikes. As it stood, the boy was decent in speed and could deliver fairly strong punches, even if the stance he was currently using was meant for cherry tapping. Ah! The boy yelled as he ran towards Anko, fist leading in a vicious punch. That's more like it. She blocked the strike with her palm, with a swift jerk she tossed the boy behind her. Naruto flew through the air a few feet before he righted himself in the air and landed on all fours. He dug his feet in and rushed her again, dodging from side to side to try and throw Anko off. Not bad kid. She laughed, dodging to the side to trip him and send him rolling into a tree in a heap. But not good either, you leave yourself too open when you charge. When you come in for a strike and you're ducking back and forth like that, you need to keep inside of your opponent's striking arm and make sure you can correct yourself if your opponent dodges. That was a good try though, now pick up your dignity and fight me. Crazy snake bitch, Naruto grumbled under his breath as he got back into his stance and charged again, coming in for a low strike to the ankles, hoping to cripple his opponent somewhat to at least give him some advantage. It didn't help his self-esteem any that he was having to fight someone twice his size. Anko responded to the kick by hopping just over it, bringing her foot up as she did so to catch Naruto under the chin, sending him flying back again. He rolled with it and got to his feet after sliding a good 15 feet. Tell me again, how kicking my ass is supposed to make me stronger? Naruto asked, rubbing his bruised jaw. It's training, deal with it. She stated flatly. Figures, he mumbled, getting back into position again. This time he was going to take it slower, just rushing in there wasn't doing anything. Oh, using a defensive stance. Well now, let's test it, shall we? A wide grin crossed her face as she rushed him. Shit, Naruto cursed. Bringing his arms in front of him and across to stop the kick aimed for his face, the blow knocked him back a few feet. He rolled to the side as a fist connected with the ground where he was a second before. He placed his hands on the ground and kicked out with his left foot, catching Anko on her lead shoulder, before tucking into a roll to dodge a kick she threw his way. Quickly getting to his feet, he blocked a punch and sent it wide. Getting in closer under her guard, he sent a punch into her stomach before hopping back to get out of the grapple she was going for. That was a nice punch, Gaki. She coughed. That actually hurt a little. You do know that this is hardly fair, right? You're twice my height and weight, many times my experience, and I'm pretty sure you're just toying with me. And you think you won't fight people like that when you become a ninja? Anko deadpanned. I fought Orochimaru's snake summons and won in a taijutsu match. Those bastards are bigger than a house. You think that bothered me at the time? Hell no. I did exactly what you are doing now, using your opponent's movements against them and striking when you have an opening. She smirked again, and since you've hit me, you're clearly up to this level of speed. This level? A sinking feeling filled his stomach. Low genin speed test complete. She yelled exuberantly. High genin time. Fuck, his words were cut off by a fist to the face. -3 months later. Alright Gaki, take 5. Anko yelled at him as the boy collapsed in a heap. He had spent the last 3 hours doing nothing but endurance training, which frankly surprised her. She'd thrown other chunin through her personal gauntlet a few times in her career, and the Gaki handled it like a seasoned jonin. The kid had stamina, there wasn't any doubt about it. Maybe he could use that stamina for other things. HRK bad Anko. She slapped herself, no pedo thoughts. She looked out over the clearing to see her husband's clones at work. His chakra control and change in chakra nature training was going well. He'd gotten the leaf floating exercise after the first week of training, though even with his clones, it took a while since he was still a child and his control was abysmal at best. Even now, tree climbing was still a bit difficult for him to maintain. Of course, she was also making him float leaves while climbing the trees to maximize the torturer training. As for the change in nature training, he'd completed channeling all 5 elements into a leaf. He was struggling through the second part of the training though. It would most likely take him the rest of the year to finish the second step for each element. Anko's mouth cracked into a wicked smirk, plenty of time to get the kid's ass-kicking potential up to snuff. The smirk spread out into a large ear-to-ear grin. The academy teachers won't know what the hell hit them. HRK. -7 months later. The loud yells of children and the shuffling of feet surround the pair as they made their way through the crowd towards the academy doors. All around them there were children of several different age groups, the largest of which was right in front of them, the fresh meat as the older students joked. That first year would be starting point where the dreams of many a genin hopeful would follow. A lot of competition Gaki. Think you can handle it? Naruto snorted in amusement. Please, after that hell you put me through. He shot her a small glare, you should feel sorry for them. He pointed to the group in question who all seemed like they would play being ninja, rather than just being ninja. BFFT hahaha, yeah I guess you're right as they walked into the academy, oh and remember what I told you? Naruto got into his best Anko impression, hold back just enough to make people think you're weaker than them, deception is a ninja's bread and butter, yada yada yada, yeah I know, I'll keep my skills to myself for now, but that doesn't mean I won't do stupid shit in class you never did beat that out of me, he chuckled at that last bit. Why would I beat the creativity out of you? Some of those pranks were pure gold Gaki, a small hint of shock filled her voice, though Naruto knew it was bullshit and she was fucking with him and of the few things he couldn't stand about the woman, she hit her joke so well that sometimes you didn't know she was making fun of you. Yeah he chuckled after a few seconds. So any last minute advice? The buxom Kunoichi raised her hand to her chin thoughtfully, she seemed to honestly think about it for a good 5 seconds before reality and her merciless attitude reared its ugly head. Yeah, don't let your mouth write checks your ass can't cash, try and make some friends and for the love of Kami, watch out for fangirls. Fangirls? Beads of sweat formed on Naruto's brow as the words sunk in, fuck that. I'd rather go toe to toe with Fuzzbutt than meet one of those in a dark alley. BFFTTT hahaha Anko's merciless laughter filled the air. That's a good mindset, fangirls would tear you apart if they knew what kind of abilities you have at your fingertips, hell if I want to jump your bones when you're older, just think what a group of preteen girls would do. Naruto grew several shades of white plus I heard the Uchiha brat that survived that clan massacre is in your class, heh, the boy has a fan club already, I'm surprised he's even alive right now with the way they're clawing at his door all the time. It took a moment before Naruto could recompose himself after that little mental torture, Anko put him through okay watch for fangirls he shivered again, try and make some friends and don't pick needless fights, got it? Can I show off a little to put arrogant pricks in their place? She gave him a thumbs up yeah sure Gaki, you have my blessing to take the sticks out of people's asses when you feel the need to, so go in there and kick some ass. Naruto's hand snapped to his forehead as he went rigid in a salute mom, yes mom. He roared and ran off to his first class, ready to raise some hell. The door to the classroom slid open as the sounds of talking filled the air around Naruto. He looked around the room taking in each new face with interest. Out of everyone there, only a dozen or so even looked at him. Well then, start with the friendliest looking ones I guess. He readjusted all his clothing to make sure his foxy bits were hidden and walked over to a young boy who was munching away at a bag of chips like his life depended on it. Hello, name's Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto reached out his hand in a shake. The boy looked at the offered hand for a moment before taking it in his. Joji Akamichi he smiled, teeth flashing with some food between them. Joji what have I said about swallowing your food before you talk? A bored voice droned from his side, Naruto turned to look at the boy next to Choji, laid back, bored, pineapple-haired oh this guy looks interesting. He reached out his hand to the other kid Naruto Uzumaki, nice to meet you. Shikamaru Nara, same he returned the shake again in a bored tone. After Naruto found his seat he scanned the room, the other few people who still seemed interested in him were some kid with glasses and a long coat, name was Shino or something like that. A girl he recognized as Hinata sitting in the back of the room. And 2 women who seemed to be fronting over someone in the corner. Or in other words fangirl stay the fuck away mode. Activate. Yahoo. A voice yelled from the back of the room, the 3 boys turned to see a wild-looking boy in a hoodie hopping up and down in joy. Boy, dog boy, keep it down. Naruto yelled at him, he had smelled a strong scent of dog when he walked in, thanks to his new fox-like nature, but he couldn't place where it was coming from, looking at the wild boy, now he could tell the smell was coming from him. The dog boy turned to Naruto with a scowl on his face, you wanna start something, huh? Heh, I don't start things dog breath, I finish them. He replied in a cold tone that sent shivers up the spines of several people in the room, oh I am so thanking Anko for teaching me that killing intent trick, the look on everyone's face is priceless. The dog boy paled a little bit and a bead of sweat formed on his brow, but other than that he was holding up rather well. Why you picking a fight? He stuttered slightly. Nah, only if you started, but I won't do anything unless you do something. I'm here to make friends and learn how to be a ninja, so what do you say? Friends. He reached his hand out for the 3rd time that day and smiled a genuine smile. Dog boy's expression turned from scared to confused, his brow twitching nervously as his eyebrows knitted together. Sure he said at length name's Kiba Inuzuka. Naruto Uzumaki, and I gotta ask, why do you smell like a dog so much? I could understand maybe having a pet that has its scent on you, but that's not it, your entire body smells like it. You can smell that. You must have a pretty good nose. Yeah, my family is famous for our Ninken ninja dogs. You could say we're as a part of our partners as they are to us. That's sort of the reason I was yelling earlier. I just found out earlier today that I'll be getting my Ninken partner soon. His grin took up his entire face at that. Naruto looked a little freaked out at the boy's reaction to getting a dog. Yeah, okay. I can't really see myself with an animal partner, but whatever, to each their own. If you don't like animal partners, why do you smell like a fox so much, huh? Naruto was confused for a second before he palmed his face. Oh, that's just a part of my bloodline. His eyes widened a bit, he hadn't meant to say that. Most of the people in the room who were barely listening before now were eyeing the boy intently. You have a bloodline? Shikamaru asked. What is it? It's kind of a first-generation bloodline, so I'm the first person in the village to have it. He laughed nervously. Shit, I didn't want to have to use this lie yet. Oh well, the Kyuubi container rubbed the back of his head. As for what it is, well, it's a bit of a long story. We have another 30 minutes or so before class starts. Kiba nudged him. Apparently he wasn't gonna let this go, so, in no little frustration, Naruto began his tale using the lies Anko concocted for him to make making friends a bit easier on him, that, and being able to show off his foxy attributes without worrying too much about being looked on as a monster. Well, it starts 8 years ago on October 10th, the day of the Kyuubi Atakin, my birthday, he said absently, making a few in the room wide-eyed. During the fox attack, the hospital I was in was crushed under one of the fox's tails. Apparently I was the only one there at the time, so I don't know what happened to my parents. Most assumed they had died in the attack, and I was put into an orphanage. Well, it turns out that one of the Kyuubi's tails came extremely close to me during all that, and a large portion of its chakra blanketed the area around me. Now normally the fox's chakra would have killed any normal person exposed to it. Somehow, I survived, and up until a year ago I was a regular looking person, normal, except for a few whisker marks on my cheeks. He pointed to the marks in question. But a year ago my bloodline activated. The fox's chakra had changed my body a bit and mutated it into a bloodline, and Willumi might as well get this out of the way. Well, I'm letting everything out. He closed his eyes for a moment before taking his hat off and pulling his tail out from his pants. Yeah, I kinda got a few other gifts from that attack as well, he laughed nervously. Now there were many things that Naruto was expecting: fear, hatred, anger, all of the above in most cases, but the looks on the kids' faces shocked him to his very core. They look amazed, the boys of the class looked at him in awe, while the girls Okamathi looked hungry. They were eyeing his twitching ears and the way his tail flicked back and forth with a desire to glomp his foxiness. Naruto backed away quickly from the girls, which confused the boys in the room, that is until they looked at the girls and started snickering at Naruto, who paled visibly. HN. A voice grunted from the side. Naruto turned to the sound to eye a boy sitting on the far side of class next to a window. Let's see, black hair, black eyes, breedy emo attitude, yep. Definitely an Uchiha. The blonde was mildly annoyed by this, the bastard was ignoring him like he wasn't even worth his time. Boy, you got a problem with me? No, you're just a loser, that's all. He replied in an even voice. Almost all of the girls in the room swooned at his supposed coolness. Oh ho ho, he did not just go there, Naruto seethed, teeth gritted in anger. His anger quickly cooled though as a smile touched his lips. Hey, if you think I'm such a loser, kid, why don't you put your money where your mouth is, or are you afraid? The black-haired boy jerked his head towards Naruto, a look of anger on his face. Watch what you say, loser, I'm an Uchiha. The black-haired boy growled at him. BFFT Uchiha, a clan who does nothing but steal the hard work of others, and they say their nobility, more like a clan of thieves, more like it. That was it, the Uchiha boy was out of his seat and raising a fist back to strike. Naruto just smiled and stepped to the side, tripping the boy like Anko had done to him his first day of training. The Uchiha had speed, that's for sure, but after fighting the snake mistress for so long it felt like he was moving in slow motion. Sasuke picked himself off the ground and glared at Naruto with a look of pure hatred on his face. Naruto just stared. What? Was that it? Ha 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 ha, seriously dude, you're pathetic. Another fist flew at the boy, but a quick grab caught the hand, and in a small movement Naruto had his leading leg between the Uchihas. In a single jerking motion the boy was flipped over his back and laid out on the ground, knocking the air out of his lungs. Naruto stood over him and stared intently into his black eyes. Look, I'm here to make friends and learn how to be a better ninja. I will even consider you a friend and ally if you do two simple things. That goes for the rest of you too. He snapped to the others in the room, who flinched. 1. Don't make fun of me or the memory of my family. He paused to let those words sink in a little bit. And 2. Don't try to hurt those that I consider friends. You do that and we won't have a problem. If you don't, well, getting your ass handed to you is the least of your worries. His cold tone sent chills down several people's spine. He held his hand out. Name's Naruto Uzumaki. The Uchiha glared at the hand for a moment before grabbing it. Sasuke Uchiha, he grunted as he was hauled to his feet. Nice to meet ya, the blonde smiled, confusing everyone there. Where had that cold hard look the boy had on earlier gone? It was like it never existed. Troublesome, Shikamaru deadpanned from the side. Ooh. Okay class, today we're going to be learning how to throw kunai and shuriken. The instructor pointed to a wooden target 15 feet away. The Chunin stood before the target, showed the class the correct method of handling both thrown weapons. With a quick flick, the pieces of bladed death hurtled towards the wooden target. With a meaty thunk, all of them hit home, a decent 7 out of 10 kill shots. The other 3 were not lethal, but had it been on a human target would have hobbled them. Now line up in front of the target and throw the 5 kunai and shuriken that are provided. The children rushed to get in line. Naruto found himself near the back of the line. Thankfully he had his tail poked back down his pants and his cap back on before the teachers could come back into the room and start something. Now outside in the training area he could finally relax a bit. "Hey Naruto." A voice whispered next to him. He turned to the voice and noticed Shikamaru and Choji right behind him. "Yeah, what is it?" he whispered back. "Choji and me were wondering if you wanted to go out for barbecue later today, our treat." Apparently the two took his "I want to make friends" speech to heart. Damn, they start quick for being big and chronically lazy. Not that he was complaining any. "Sure, where are you going?" He wanted to get a good idea on which restaurant they were going to, just to make sure it was a place he was at least tolerated. After Choji told him it was one of his parents' restaurants, he calmed down a bit. It's not like they would stop him and his friends from eating at his own family restaurant just because of him, right? Thankfully that wasn't the case, as Choji's father was there at the barbecue place. Choza had been at the council meeting that night and knew the boy wasn't the fox, but its container, and when he and Naruto finally got to talk face to face it only cemented that fact. That and when Naruto had spoken of his love for Ramen, Choza had a look on his face as if he'd found a long-lost son. He let out a hearty laugh and told the chefs in the back to prepare a feast for his son and friends. Needless to say, the 3 academy students had to roll themselves out of the building when the meal was finished. They spent the rest of the day cloud watching and just talking about things they found delicious or troublesome. "Ooh. Yo Kiba, keep the mud off me." Naruto groaned, scrapping the Kiba's newly acquired companion off his shoe as Akamaru was gnawing bits of the straps off. "Hey, I can't help it if he's teething," the boy tried to defend himself. "Then get him a chew toy, damn it," he growled, yanking the dog off his foot and chucking him at Kiba. "And if he ever humps my leg I will neuter him." Naruto let out a little sigh which made the few people around him sweat. Kiba on the other hand was bug-eyed and nodding in agreement. Strangely, Akamaru was doing the same. "Quiet down class." Naruto stopped threatening Kiba. "Ooh." Shino and Naruto sat across from each other in the school library. Naruto had a book on tactics and theory, while Shino had a book on the many different species of insect of the Leaf Village, hardback first edition if I'm not mistaken. "Shino?" Naruto nodded to the boy. "Naruto?" He nodded back. "Good day Naruto-san." He stood up and started to walk away. "You too Shino-san." He continued to read. Odd how he respects silence like that. Ooh. Naruto was walking through the hall towards his next class. So far the academy was pretty awesome. Thought the teachers taught a bunch of boring stuff almost every day, only letting them out to do exercises and practice the basic 3. He stopped when he noticed Hinata was nearby looking at him. "Hey Hinata-chan." He waved to the pale Hyuga heiress, trying to be polite to the odd girl. Thump. "Hinata. Why did you faint?" "Hinata. Ooh. Alright class, today we're going to have sparring matches to test out the taijutsu forms you've learned so far. Any form is allowed, but lethal moves and strikes are strictly forbidden." The Chunin instructor pointed out Sasuke. "Sasuke, you're up, now who's going to spar with him?" None of the other kids wanted to get in the ring with him, since out of the entire class Sasuke had the highest scores in taijutsu, that is if you're not counting. "I'll fight the bastard." Naruto grinned as he walked to the front of the line. "You sure about that, dope? You got lucky last time, this time I'll kick your ass." He pulled his shirt off, exposing his pale chest to the girls of the class, as expected. "Oh my god, Sasuke is so hood." The voice was piercing and could only belong to one Sakura Haruno. No doubt another loud voice agreed, this one belonged to Ino Yamanaka. Both were fangirls, both fucking scared Naruto to no end. However, for a good prank he would be willing to burst a few bubbles. He grinned fierily at Sasuke before slowly unbuttoning his shirt. He wore button-ups, so he wouldn't have to remove his hat to take the shirt off, but oh what a wonderful sound it was to hear most of the girls in the class gasp. Along with a few of the boys as well. With what? Naruto was pretty built. His constant training with Anko had hardened quite a few areas of his body, leaving lean muscles. It wasn't grossly disproportionate for his age, it simply flowed with his body type, compact muscles on a compact frame, and unnaturally tanned skin no less. "Hey the fangirls in 3, 2. Oh my god. 1." He mentally chuckled. "Okay Sasuke, let's get this over with." He took up the academy stance since it was what they were learning and egged the Uchiha on with a come get some motion. Meanwhile on the sidelines. Sakura. Yeah, you know. Naruto is hot, like really, really hot. Yeah, I know. What should we do? I don't know. Hinata meanwhile was passed out with a massive nosebleed and whispering something about snuggling foxy blondes. Ch. 6. Graduation. Academy, final testing day. 4 years. Has it really been 4 years? Naruto grabbed the back of his head and leaned back in his seat in the corner of room. He looked around at the class as they were called to the front to take the graduation test. Over the course of the past 4 years he had made fairly decent headway in his studies, getting up to what he thought would be mid-tune in his skill, before a fairly glaring wall halted his progress. Using Kage Bunshin's had been a godsend for him, being able to learn at an accelerated pace could only ever be a plus, and he had taken it well beyond the extreme to take advantage of his new elemental masteries. He finished each of his change and chakra natures, so he was fairly proficient in his own mind. There were masters out there that could still control elements much greater than himself, but he could still give an average shinobi a run for their money. One of the greatest accomplishments that Naruto's clones could claim were his raise in academics. While he wasn't top of the class, he was still more knowledgeable about ninja life than pretty much anyone else in his class, and to a certain extent in the entire village, because he hadn't just brushed up on his ninja skills in history. He had expanded his library to include things that would help him later on in life, like fabricating his own weapons and supplies. Dustin had run him ragged teaching his smithing craft to the blonde-haired child. Naruto shivered at the memory. Flashback. Ring. Naruto, what can I do for you today, my boy? Dustin smiled at the kid. He was 10 now and had sprouted up a little bit since the last time he'd seen him. I was wondering, sir, if you could teach me blacksmithing. Dustin raised an eyebrow in surprise. And what would a ninja need to know blacksmithing for? Naruto twitched a little, rubbing his arm apprehensively. Well, he kinda need it for that thing we talked about when we first met. The man's surprise grew. He thought the boy would give up on that when it got too difficult, but to still be trying after 3 years showed dedication, and that was one thing Dustin prized above almost anything else. Hey, oh dad. Well, almost anything. He prized his daughter more than anything else. Hello, Tenten. Naruto greeted her, throwing her a little salute. Hey Naruto, how have you been? It's been what? 2 months since you last came by. I've been doing good, and yeah, it's been a while, been too busy with the academy and training. You too? Man, you're lucky. I have to deal with all the stiff shirts in the advanced classes. There's this dude in my class, his name's Niji Hyuga. A real hard-ass, kinda cute I have to admit, but he doesn't have anything on you. She let out a little smile at the blonde maverick. Naruto snorted at that. You should see the girls of my class. After that little spar between me and Sasuke, it's been a civil war between the fan clubs. I'm still shocked I have a fan club. Naruto shivered unconsciously, hearing the phantom wails of the couple of girls in his class that fawned over him. What was that? Tenten wondered. I felt a disturbance in the force. The what? Nothing. Anyway, I was trying to get your dad here to teach me a bit about blacksmithing. I just need a bit of training so I can make a few things myself when I need them. The FFFT, yo dad. She threw him a thumbs up. Don't worry about the whole take my secrets to the grave shtick, teach Naruto here the basics and put him through the gauntlet. She let out a little evil chuckle. Dustin shared it, which made Naruto slightly uncomfortable, standing there with them leering at him. This is going to hurt, isn't it? Naruto asked blandly. Oh, you have no idea. She chuckled. Then flashback. After the torture that was learning from Dustin was over, Naruto could honestly say he was humbled by the blacksmith. Sure, he wasn't anywhere close to a pro, but he could still make many of the things that the village wouldn't give him. Only one real problem kept the boy down. Plainly speaking, his strength was shit. The wall that kept him tethered to low mid-chunin in skill was his body couldn't handle the forces involved with his rise in skills. He was taller and stronger from his ordeal with Kyuubi, sure, topping off roughly 4 inches taller than his canon self. Just slightly shorter than Rock Lee, but he still had to build up his skills slowly but surely through constant training. Speaking of ordeals, after he had spilled the beans about his new foxy bits to the class, the kids went back and told their parents about the kid with the foxy bits in class. From what he could gather, the parents had told them to stay away from the demon child so he doesn't hurt you, with his natural good-natured personality, along with his constant joking in class. Many of the kids ignored the warnings, to the parents' dismay. Word had also spread around town about his new accessories, but other than a few more glares, maybe a raised hand or two, nothing seemed much different. It was either the fear of Kami that Anko put into people or the constant pranks he pulled that kept most of the civilians from taking him seriously. He still preferred to hide the ears and tail though, by either stuffing them away under clothing or hiding under a hinge. It didn't really matter. As for his classmates, for 4 years he had been keeping tabs on them, creating a mental dossier on their personalities and abilities, just in case he was ever paired with any of them. Naruto turned his gaze to the duck-headed wonder in the corner of the room and just stared. He couldn't describe the feeling of putting the arrogant Uchiha in his place when he stuck his head out during their spars. Overall, Sasuke was a nice guy when you got to know him, broody. Yes. Self-centered. Yes, but a decent guy nonetheless. He did carry a bit too much emotional baggage with him, a fact that Naruto would eventually break the boy of if it was the last thing he'd do. After all, he really was one of Naruto's first true friends, so if he could help the Uchiha get over his pissy attitude, he'd count that as a positive point in his book. Following the rows of the room had his eyes land on Sakura. The girl was good, a bit annoying in her fangirlish attitude, not to mention violent but a clever mind and greater control of chakra you will not find in any of the other students, except for maybe Naruto himself. The girl next to her, Ino like Sakura except less book smart and more seductive, I swear she acted like a slut half the time in class, but damn it if wasn't effective. Continuing on, Kiba, another good guy, loyal to a fault, decent friend, kind of annoying after he got his dog. Some of the others in class think his is going to his head when he starts yapping off about starting his own pack. Hell, Naruto could start his own pack whenever the hell he wanted with his mastery over his ice bloodline, the main elements, the foxy bits, and any other hidden bloodlines he may still hold. He could have his own damn harem if he just asked the council to supply him with a woman, though that thought made the boy's stomach turn. Turning himself into breeding stock was not the most pleasant idea he'd had that day. Above and to the right were Shikamaru and Choji, the brains and the muscle. They were awesome people to hang with, and it only helped him along when he realized that old Shika was a freaking genius. The fact the guy had an IQ over 200 was just scary, but you couldn't find a better challenge at Shogi or Go in the village. He still hadn't beaten him on sane 4 years. Near the back of the class on his row was Shino. What was just Shino, the guy gave him the creeps, but he was a smart person to hold a conversation with when he did open his mouth for more than a few casual words. Cerulean eyes fell on the one thing in the room that Naruto couldn't come to terms with: Hinata. The girl was a mystery to him. She followed him at a distance everywhere. It wasn't like he really minded her watching him from afar. She never did look at him with animosity or hate, just a quiet acceptance and reverence. He had come to appreciate the quiet girl's gaze as it was a strangely relaxing feeling, knowing someone was watching you with a positive attitude. The big problem, however, was getting the girl to talk to him. In 4 years she hadn't said more than maybe a couple dozen words to him, and any time he tried to talk to her, she had just blushed a very dark shade of red and passed out. Again, something he'd have to figure out and tackle at a later date. Right now was game time, the end of the school year, the make it or break it of the academy. Iruka was handing out several written tests to the class. Boo-oring the blonde mentally droned. He had no problem doing the written work, he just had too much pent-up energy at the moment. He was a man of action, damn it. After the written test was the practicals, basically a grade on standard academy taijutsu and using ninja tools. He was decent at the academy style, but he preferred a variant that tossed an Anko style. His hit rate for kunai and shuriken was 8 out of 10, not bad but not good either. After that was the final part of the test, the basic 3, Bunshin, Kawarimi, and Henge. To Naruto, this part was the most important. He hadn't really mastered any of the basic 3, regardless of the fact that they were the foundation of all the ninja techniques beyond. He knew Kage Bunshin, so the clone part of the test was in the bag. His transformation wasn't that bad. In fact, with his sexy jutsu he was actually damn good at it. His replacement was decent. Nothing to write home about but still a passing grade. All in all, he had this in the bag, and thanks to a small incident involving a certain white-haired chunin, he didn't have to worry about anyone screwing with his test score. Yeah, good old Mizuki team had fucked up before the graduation test ever started. He'd noticed Mizuki acting a bit on edge and staring at a few of the failing students with really bad grades, you know, the disposable kind. Well, acting shifty in a village of ninja may be par for the course, but doing that while teaching a class of students that have a majority of the clan heirs in said class, and you have a very big problem. One word to Sarutobi and a squad of Anbu were tailing Mizuki's ass. The bastard was caught red-handed when he was pulling a kid aside to have him steal the forbidden scroll of sealing. After that, they threw his ass to a bickie and found out he had been sabotaging the entire class in one way or another for years, a serious crime in its own right, but there were several other dark and dirty secrets that all but damned Mizuki to a life in prison. Uzumaki, Naruto, get down here. Iruka's voice cut into his musing. Come on Naruto, it's your turn, or do you want me to fail you? Alright. Geez, you'd think the Kyuubi rose from the grave or something. Naruto stole a small glance at Iruka's pale white face and snickered quietly. Kami, he loved doing that. Iruka was a nice guy if a bit gullible. Okay, what's my score of awesome on a scale of 1 to 10? Teeth glimmered as his grin took up his whole face. Haha, very funny. Iruka deadpanned, and if you must know, 3. Oh, he bust a gut when Naruto's grin turned into a deep frown. He had definitely gotten under the blonde skin with that one. You're gonna pay for that one, Iruka-sensei. Okay, clone, replacement and transformation, right? And not of confirmation. Okay, let's do this. In a one-handed hand seal he summoned 5 cage buncheons. In a puff of smoke, 2 of them were transformed into Iruka and Mizuki, the other 2 transformed into large katanas. The 2 human clones grabbed the katana clones and rushed each other. In a flurry of stabs and slashes the 2 dueled. A thrust by clone Iruka was diverted to the side, and a follow-up by clone Mizuki, who cut down the length of the scarred Chunin's blade. It would have taken clone Iruka's head off had he not brought the guard of his blade up and raised the attack harmlessly overhead. To keep from getting slashed on the downward cut, clone Mizuki crouched down and took one hand off of his blade, and with a yell, he lanced his fist out and landed a blow into clone Iruka's sternum when he raised his blade to strike clone Mizuki, causing him to dispel. Or so he thought, as a sword ripped through clone Mizuki's shoulder, dispelling him to reveal that clone Iruka had replaced itself with the 5th Naruto, who had crept up behind clone Mizuki to blindsided him. Another cloud of smoke signaled the clone's dispelling, leaving an astonished class and Iruka to stare at the blonde maverick, who just so happened to be fiddling with his ninja too. So do I pass? He grinned mischievously. Iruka could only nod dumbly at him. The whole duel between his clone self and the Mizuki clone took only a couple of seconds, but the swordplay was impressive. Hell, he couldn't move as fast as those clones had. He threw a glance at Naruto for a second. Those were shadow clones, weren't they? Yep, gotta love them, one of the most useful jutsu ever. His grin hadn't left his face. Well, it's not the Academy Bunshin, but it is an advanced Bunshin, and it is acceptable in this case. Congratulations, Naruto, you pass. He flashed him a warm smile. Naruto's come a long way. Heh, only a few years ago I saw him as nothing more than the fox in human skin, but just look at him, no demon could ever be this goofy. I just hope he can handle the world outside the village the way he handles himself. Hiryo, who am I kidding? He doesn't need to prepare for the world needs to prepare for him. His thoughts were filled with praise for the boy in front of him. It was truly inspiring to see how much he had grown both physically and mentally these last 4 years. He tossed Naruto his hit IA to immediately tied it around his head as he took his seat at the back of the class. Alright class, that's it for today's test. Those of you who passed come back tomorrow to meet your new sensei and find out your team placements. For those of you who failed, there is always next year, so keep practicing. Dismissed. He turned and walked out of the classroom. The next day. Anko stood in front of her mirror, trying on several new dresses she had bought over the weekend. She wanted to take Naruto out after he graduated and passed the real genin test. After all, she had spent 5 years with the boy and their relationship hadn't really gone anywhere. Sure, there was the occasional kiss, and they did pretty much everything with each other, bathing, eating, even shopping. Hell, they could be called a married couple and everything but having sex, which Naruto made clear the year before when she had initiated a bit of a dirty bubble bath, that they would wait till he was a bit older to do that sort of thing. That didn't stop Anko from teasing and corrupting the boy as much as she could, much to his ever-present annoyance, but she didn't care. He was fun to be around with, and that's all that really mattered to her. Hell, even the threat the council threw at them every year or so about multiple wives or having children didn't faze her. In fact, they had a conversation just a few months ago that if he ever found someone else to share with, that she would support him in his choice. It's not like she minded. Really more fun for her in her mind. She flashed a feral grin. The little-known secret to only a select few women that had known her before her marriage was that Anko was bisexual, and she had no problem with a ninja choice. In fact, on several occasions she even promoted it. If Naruto ever did find another wife to marry, the feral grin never left her face as pervy thoughts floated through the snake mistress's mind while she tried on another dress, this one more mesh than fabric. Ooh-oh. UGGHHH, so bored. Our blonde-haired hero moaned in anguish. It had been an hour and a half since the last of the teams had left. He looked at the only other 2 people in the room, his teammates, the ever-broody Sasuke and his pink-haired Chia pet Sakura. He had tried to start up a conversation with them, but Sasuke had blew him off because he was in one of his moods. Honestly, you'd think he was on the rag. Ugh. Note to self, tell the narrator to shut the fuck up about fem. Sasuke, fourth wall breaking aside. He really was bored out of his gourd. Looking around one more time, he finally sighed and stood up. The Uchiha noticed the movement out of the corner of his eye. Yo, dope, what are you doing? I'm bored, he remarked dryly as he started doing one-handed push-ups. If we're going to be sitting here for hours on end, we might as well do something productive while we wait. He raised an eyebrow. And what exactly are you doing? What's it look like, team? I'm training. I'd rather my muscles not atrophy while we wait. Finishing a set on one side, he switched to the other. If you want, I can show you a few tricks to getting a good workout. What do you say? Sasuke looked around for a moment before sighing. He'd never admitted, but Naruto was right, it was boring as hell in this place. Alright, he stood up and walked over to Naruto. What kind of training is this? Naruto sat up for a moment and looked around. He noticed a small stack of flashcards under Iruka's desk. "Alright, here's what you do." He grabbed a couple slips and handed one to Sasuke. "First off, I'll explain the chakra part of this exercise, simply. Use your chakra to stick that piece of paper to your forehead like this." He reached up and placed the paper on his brow, and like a piece of tape it stuck. "Once you get this part, start doing physical exercises. I find that push-ups and sit-ups get the best results out of this. Not only are you working your chakra reserves with the paper, but when you're concentrating on keeping the paper on and doing the exercises, it'll increase your control as well, not to mention you're still getting a workout that's that much harder since you are using chakra while you're exercising." Sasuke looked at the paper in his hand for a moment, shrugged and stuck it to his head. It didn't stick as well as he had wanted it to, but it stayed. He sat down and started doing crunches, sweat beading his brow. Sakura was watching her crush workout with a blush on her face. He was just so sexy. Naruto rolled his eyes. He knew exactly what she was daydreaming about, and it sickened him to no end. Sure, Sakura was hot, but Anko had beaten an ever-present fear of fangirls into him. To him, fangirls were scum, lower than dirt, and to hell, if he was going to have one on his team, if he had anything to say about it, Sakura. He yelled, snapping her out of her Sasuke-induced trance. "You going to join us?" "Why should I?" She bit back. "Well, for one thing, you're weak," he deadpanned dryly. "Naruto, you jerk." "I am not weak." "Yeah, you are, and quit lying to yourself about it. Out of the entire class you have the worst physical ability. Ino has better taijutsu skills than you, Shikamaru has better taijutsu than you, and he's one of the laziest people I know." Sakura shook in anger, tears welling in her eyes. She was about to run from the room when Naruto stopped her. "But, that's why I'm trying to help you, Sakura." He tossed her one of the slips. "Just doing this exercise over a period of a month almost doubled my chakra control, and it increased my strength by a fifth. Multitasking is an essential in battle, and being able to concentrate on your physical attacks while you're unconsciously controlling your chakra is beyond helpful. That's why I turn my entire day into one big exercise. Even when I'm relaxing, I'm still doing something to better myself. After we get done today with our sensei, you should look into it too. Using weights, going the long way to your destination, sticking leaves or other light stuff to your body with chakra throughout the day. Stuff like this is great training for a good ninja." Clapping filled the air around them. The three genin turned to the sound to see a silver-haired masked man standing in the doorway. "Heh, I was gonna say my first impressions of you three was I hate you, but it seems I have someone fairly competent on my squad. Spiky over there has it right, that's a great exercise. You got 30 minutes, after you're finished training meet me on the roof." He then disappeared in a swirl of leaves. "Well, that was interesting." Naruto sweat dropped. Minus 30 minutes later. "Naruto, it sucked. The only girl there bitched, my muscles are already sore." "That's because you were using chakra at the same time as you exercised, thus you couldn't use chakra to do most of the work your muscles should be doing, so all that effort was placed on your muscles alone, which in turn increases the effects of the workout," Naruto pointed out as they reached the roof. "It still sucks," she huffed. Naruto just palmed his face in irritation. "Yo." The silver-haired Jonin hailed them from the edge of the roof. "Alright, now that you're all up here, I think it's time we introduced ourselves. Give your likes, dislikes, dreams for the future and some hobbies. Here, I'll start. My name is Kakashi Haddock. I have many likes and dislikes. I don't know you well enough to tell you my dreams for the future, and I have hobbies." He nodded to them. "Well, that was informative," Naruto remarked dryly. "Yet all we got was his name," Sakura agreed. Kakashi looked bored. "Doesn't matter, you first." He pointed to Naruto. "Well, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like training, ramen, and proving myself. My dream." Naruto's face darkened a second. "Actually no, not a dream. My goal is to restore the Uzumaki clan and become a better Hokage than any that's come before me, so that the people of this village can look up to me as a true shinobi." Kakashi stared at him a moment. "Well, isn't that interesting?" He nodded. "Hobbies? Well, besides pranks and practical jokes." Kakashi sweat dropped. "Yeah, I saw your handiwork the other day, painting the Hokage monument in broad daylight, and nobody noticed you till you were done. How exactly did you pull that off?" Naruto laughed. "Sorry, sensei, a good magician never reveals his secrets." Kakashi I smiled at him. "Oh, Mr. Magic, and how many Anbu chased you around town after that little stunt?" "Heh, 2 teams of Anbu, 11 Chunin and 4 Jonin." He had his hands behind his head with a shit-eating grin on his face. Sakura and Sasuke just stared blankly at him. "What the hell, dope?" Sasuke said, dumbfounded. Naruto looked at him. "You say something." The 3 genin turned after hearing a crash to see Kakashi face first on the floor. Am I already rubbing off on them? Kakashi wondered, face still firmly planted on the ground. After removing said face from said floor, he pointed at Sakura. "Okay, Bubblegum, you're next." Sakura glared at him. "Sakura Haruno, my dreams are." She glanced quickly at Sasuke. "My hobbies are." Again at Sasuke. "I like Sasuke and I hate Naruto." Naruto sighed, out of all the kids in the academy he was stuck with Broody and the Beast. Well, isn't she shallow? Kakashi thought blandly. Okay, Duckhead, you're next. Ha. I knew other people thought that about your hair. Guess who said that? Sakura glared at Naruto and Sasuke scowled. Sasuke-chiha, I hate a lot of things, and I like few. I don't see why we are talking about dreams, since Naruto has it right for once. I don't have a dream, I have a goal. My goal is to restore my clan and its honor, and to kill a certain someone. An eerie silence filled the air as Naruto and Sakura inched back a few hairs from the kai Sasuke was giving off. Dare I ask about your hobbies? Kakashi wondered dryly, ignoring the kai. Training, brooding and knitting. Kakashi choked. What was that last one? He asked quickly. Knitting, Sasuke replied with a straight face. Kakashi suppressed the need to giggle like a schoolgirl. If Sasuke's parents knew his hobby they'd be rolling over in their graves. Just thinking of Yugaku catching his son knitting made him choke, and his mother Mikoto would have made him her little princess like she did Itachi. After a few seconds of inner conflict on whether or not to fall over in fits of giggles or just to point and laugh, he thankfully did neither and opted to file it away under blackmail for later use. Okay, now that we understand each other, I want you to meet me at Training Ground 3 tomorrow at 7 AM for survival exercises. Oh, and don't eat anything, or else you're gonna throw up. He chuckled a little before he shunshed it away. And like that he leaves us with nothing to go on, greatest sensei ever. Naruto palmed his face with a tick mark showing prominently. Whatever. Alright, ignore the last thing he said and eat tonight and in the morning, okay? The other two looked at him like he was stupid or something. But sensei just told us not to eat, why would we break the rules like that? Sakura rubbed her legs together nervously. Do things. 1. Tomorrow is most likely not going to be a survival exercise, it's probably gonna be a test on teamwork. Hell, why would they go through all the trouble of sticking us on teams and preaching about teamwork all throughout the academy if it wasn't about teamwork? The looks on their faces told him they hadn't thought of that too, since he directly told us not to eat anything while taking into account that he's probably going to be pitting us against each other tomorrow. It's safe to say that he's going to try and turn our tempers on each other to test our teamwork and resolve. After all, starving and desperate ninja a good team do not make. So eat something, it doesn't have to be much, just enough so we don't kill each other tomorrow out of hunger and stress. They both nod, if anything they could just blame Naruto if things went south, so with that, and a few goodbyes Team 7 headed home for the night. Ooh. Ugh, today sucked. Naruto groaned mentally. I wonder what Kakashi will have us do tomorrow. If I know Sasuke and Sakura they probably won't eat anything, so just in case bring an apple for both of them or something. Sigh, so much to do tomorrow, might as well get some sleep. Well, as Naruto nodded off he felt a slight tug on his conscious eye. This better be good. Kyuubi. He opened his eyes and he was again in that familiar sewer. Seriously, he needed to clean this place out. He turned to stare at the beast behind the cage, waiting for it to speak. Kyuubi looked down at him with a small grin on its face. Hello monkey, I see you graduated today from that pathetic excuse you call an academy. Yeah, yuck it up furball, I'm on my way to becoming Hokage and ain't nothing gonna stop me now. So what did you need me for? Sigh, honestly. It's kind of lonely in here, it's been more than a year since you've even come in here, there's nothing to do except sleep and torment you, and seeing as you don't torment easily, it's gotten rather boring in here. Well, sorry if my head doesn't match to standards, suck it up, you're a man, take the pain like the rest of us. Naruto was about to make another smart comment when a large amount of killing intent flooded the room. He snapped his head towards Kyuubi and stared into its eyes. There was a mixture of anger and hurt in them. What the fuck? Kyuubi grit its teeth in anger, glaring holes into Naruto. That's just it, you stupid monkey, I am not a male. Wait, what? The blonde's eyes flew wide in shock. You're a girl. The fox med somehow and spoke evenly. Yes, I am a female, a girl. How do you not notice these things? He looked a bit sheepish. Well, I just assumed, with such a deep voice and all. The tick mark formed on her head. I'm 100 times your size, mortal, my vocal cords are much larger than yours. If I was your size or you mine we'd sound the same as the other. Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment before a look of disgust crossed his face. But that means a gross. What? The vixen tilted her head curiously. I was going to say it must suck having your junk soaked in the sewer all day long, but now that I know you're a girl that must suck even more. He scrunched his nose in disgust. Now you know why I don't like you that much, your mind is filthy, figuratively speaking. Well, what do you want me to do? It's not like I can remove all this water, and I sure as hell ain't removing that seal. Well, you cold wat. The fox looked around its caged significantly drier cage. How? She wondered in astonishment. What did you do? Naruto turned back to the entrance of the room, noting the receding water hue. Guess I just thought of it drying out and it must have done it. You fool, a mindscape doesn't work like that, I told you as much the first time we met, a mindscape is a representation of one's own current mental state, along with past experiences. If you're sad, it rains. Happy, it's sunny. Depressed, it's foggy or dank like the sower. The fox gestured with one of her clawed hands. This is direct control over one's mindscape, only people who are true masters of the mind like those Yamanaka monkeys can do something like this. Naruto tilted his head curiously. So you're saying that I can directly change anything I want in my mind? In essence, yes. This may be another bloodline of some sort that you absorbed that day, or maybe it mutated from something you absorbed. Whatever it is, it's interesting to say the least. You got rid of the water here, and that's a welcome change for me at the very least. Maybe now my fur might finally dry out. Naruto stared at Kyuubi for a moment, looking around the dank musty room and thought, this place is a disgrace. He noted dryly. He looked back at Kyuubi, who seemed to be enjoying the dryer cage immensely. And she's loving just having a dry place to sleep. Kami, now I feel like such a bastard for keeping her in this damn place. Wait. That's it. He cupped his hands and yelled up at the vixen, oi, Kyuubi-chan. The fox growled in anger at being addressed as such. What mortal? You don't like the sower, do you? She glared at him dryly. I'd think that would be obvious. Who in their right mind would enjoy living in a place like this? Naruto's sweat dropped. Point taken. Well then, let's see how this works. Naruto scrunched his eyes in concentration, focusing on something. Slowly the walls of the room seemed to expand and disappear, leaving a bright white light in its place. Trees shot up from the floor, their leaves sprouting from nothing. The sound of songbirds filled the air along with the sounds of wind blowing through a forest. After the transformation was complete, Naruto opened his eyes to look at his work. It was the forests outside Konoha. He had even recreated the city in the distance. He turned to the fox who was sitting outside of the cage for once. However, there was a tattoo on its chest in the kanji for seal. So how's this? That better for your fur? The fox's jaw dropped to the floor. How in the hell did you create something this detailed so quickly? This is the part of the forest I see every time I sit on the Hokage monument. I just imagine the trees and kinda put the village in the distance. So what do you think? Fur bristled in the breeze as Kyuubi stretched out her limbs. What are your views on interspecies relationships? How do you? Kyuubi's face stretched into a playful grin as a giant puff of smoke filled the area. Uoth the blonde gasped as the air got knocked out of him. He landed on his back in a heap with something heavy on his chest. As his head stopped spinning from smacking the ground, he happened to glance at the heavy thing in question, only to freeze as he noticed that same playful smirk above Hymanly, smaller and more human and hotter with wet. That's why sharpened canines flashed in the sunlight as Kyuubi let out an ear-to-ear grin. She had transformed herself into a human, or rough equivalent to it. The foxy attributes that she shared with Naruto were a dead giveaway that she was a little more foxy, that's what her beauty suggested. Her face shined in the morning light, her seductive eyes framing her face as it trailed down a rather cute nose to full luscious lips. She wore a full-length burnt orange kimono with spiral designs. The kimono itself was opened in the front to reveal a rather large chest, on which the same tattoo for seals stood out on her snow-white skin. Her eyes were red and slitted like normal, and her hair was a dull rusty orange, as well as her tails, all 9 of them which splayed out behind her in a fan shape, each flicking independently. You have no idea how long I've wanted out of that fucking cage. 12 years. 12 fucking years sitting in that sewer of a mindscape looking at nothing but dark, pipe-covered walls. Thank you, kid. I know we may have started off on the wrong foot, but doing this has seriously raised you a few notches in my book. I just might not kill your loved ones now. She smiled again, despite the fact that she had just threatened to kill his loved ones at least indirectly. Naruto's sweat dropped. Yehawk. He looked up at Kyuubi who was still straddling his chest. Well, this is awkward. Kyuubi blinked a couple times before she fell over laughing. PFFT hahaha. Kid, you are so innocent it's not even funny. She tossed him a sexy smirk and ground herself on his chest a bit for effect. Don't you like this form? A little too much actually. Could you get off me? You're kind of crushing me. He gasped a few times to get his point across. Oh, you're no fun, she pouted playfully before that smirk took its place back on her face. But you are interesting. You actually care about my well-being. You're the first person to do that for me. Most are either too scared of me or are using their powers and just lording over me. You're the first to actually treat me like an equal. Naruto blinked once. What? Have you never had a friend before? A friend? She put a finger to her chin and thought. Can't say that I have. The 2 containers I had before were complete bitches to me. She pouted again, this time in anger. Naruto's eyes flew wide. Wait, there's been Kyuubi Jinchuriki before me? His voice squeaked a little. When? Who? Well, obviously 12 years ago, since that's when I was released from the last container, and roughly 20 odd years before that for the other container. That container held me for several decades actually before she passed me on to your predecessor. You said bitches, so are you saying the 2 containers before me were female? Ayubi looked lost in thought for a moment, seeming at war with herself on how she should answer his question. After a moment of thought she nodded once. Yes, Naruto, my last 2 containers were female. They were Mito Uzumaki, one of your distant relatives and wife to the first Hokage. Naruto on the other hand was wide-eyed. He had just discovered the name of one of his relatives. He knew she couldn't be alive if she was the wife of the Shodaime Hokage, but still, it was a start. And the other? He asked tentatively. Ayubi looked into Naruto's eyes. There was a pleading there, a want to know about the others before him, but this was going to be difficult to explain. My last container was your mother Kikushina Uzumaki. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki stood deathly still as his hair shadowed his eyes, ever so slightly he started to tremble. It wasn't noticeable at first, but as it grew you could tell he was crying. He curled up into a little ball at the base of a tree and sobbed, the tears on his cheeks forming twin trails of moisture down his face. Ayubi stared at the boy's whimpering form, his sobs echoing loudly around the empty forest. She sighed and gently wrapped her arms around the blonde. Naruto went rigid when he felt the contact. He tried to choke out. Just shut up kid, she said softly. I may be a demon, but I'm not heartless. Everyone seems to think we Biju are nothing but evil monsters. She gripped him a little tighter. To be perfectly honest, most of us aren't even evil. Sure, we're sadistic and like to fuck with people, our containers even more so, but we're not heartless. She rubbed the boy's back soothingly as his tears soaked her kimono. So why are you crying kid? I know finding out about your mother this way was a bit unexpected, but still. That's not it, he cried. Then what is it? Long tears streamed down his cheeks. I'm just so happy, it's so sad I can't help it. She blinked a couple times at that. What? I'm happy about knowing about my mother, but I know she must have suffered as much as I did. And just knowing that dad loved her enough to have me makes me happy as well, but I'm also sad that I'll never know more than her name and maybe her face, if there are any pictures of them left. Ayubi made a soft sound of understanding as she held the boy, rubbing his back gently to calm him down. Kid, your mother wasn't treated the way people treat you, no one really knew she held me inside of her, not to mention I hadn't attacked the village yet, so even if they did know, it wasn't as much of a stigma as it is now. Hell, back then people could have just called it an unstable bloodline and wouldn't have given it another thought. Naruto smiled bitterly at that. At least she had a better life than I've had so far. She chuckled. We're both having a hard time of it, I'll try and figure something out on knowing who they were, don't worry about that too much. Why would you do that? Ayubi sighed. Because I'm actually sorry about what has happened to you. I never meant to attack your village. After being trapped inside of Mito and your mother for so long, I really didn't want to have anything to do with Konoha anymore. The tears in Naruto's eyes had dried by now as he looked at her confused. So why did you attack then? Ayubi's face hardened in anger. It was all because of that man, she growled. The vibrations in her chest made Naruto shake. What man? He frowned. A sinking feeling filled his stomach. The man who is directly responsible for my attack on your village and the deaths of your mother and father, she replied darkly, her voice trailing off as she remembered the day. Naruto's voice was quiet for a moment before he spoke 2 simple words. Tell me. What if Naruto has all elemental affinities harem? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.